Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I really hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today, we're diving into a brand new story, a fanfic called Reincarnated a million years before the story begins. It's pretty wild, and I think you're going to love it. Let's get into it.
Chapter 1. Stagnant water. The primordial world was akin to a silent lake. Without a single breath of wind, without ripple or current, it was a world like water that did not flow, something that could hardly be called a lake, but merely stagnant water. Life and death were two sides of the same coin. To be alive was to be dead, and to be dead meant, in turn, that one was alive. There was no distinction between spirit and flesh. Those who lived did not fear death. Just as north, south, east, and west have no meaning in an empty void, fearing death was a meaningless endeavor in a world where death and life were identical. Who among them would fear a mere part of existence? Thus, the world was a loop of endless circulation leading down a single path. Since life and death held no weight, it was a shackle of solitude, where things existed side by side yet never intertwined. This solitude spiraled like a helix, gnawing endlessly at the living until it eventually carved a void, a hole, into the chests of the dead. Those who became filled with an emptiness that could never be satiated, even if they were to live again, were called hollows. And so, in this stagnant world, the first ripple known as contact began to stir. If I were to record the events unfolding before my eyes as a historical chronicle, I imagine it would feel something like that. That was the thought I had as I watched a man pounce on a perfectly normal pedestrian and begin tearing them apart. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. A man walking along at a sluggish pace suddenly had a hole burst open in the center of his chest. He looked around frantically for a moment before pouncing on a passerby and devouring them. For a split second, I thought a zombie apocalypse had broken out. If I hadn't seen the hole being carved into his chest, I probably would have stuck with that theory. In fact, even now, as this pseudo-zombie apocalypse is happening right in front of me, I can't tell if I'm dreaming or awake. In the world I remember, shocking events like a hole spontaneously appearing in someone's chest, or that person then eating another human, simply didn't happen. Of course, the story might be different on some street where people high on drugs wander around like zombies, but at the very least, the world in my memory wasn't like this. The world in my memory. Only then did it click. No, it wasn't just a realization. For the first time, I truly perceived this world. The fact that this is a world inside a manga. Entering the world of a manga was hard to believe, but then again, seeing a man develop a hole in his chest and eat someone was equally unbelievable. If I had to compare, it was a matter of different dimensions. I don't mean that in terms of the scale of the shock, but that they were literally problems of a different dimension. The fact that I entered a manga world is a matter of 2D versus 3D, while a man turning into a zombie is the reality I'm facing right this second. Assuming a 2D world has become reality, can this world still be considered 3D? Now, that's a question worth pondering. But well, no matter how much I think about it, I'm not going to find an answer, so I might as well just let it go. RRR. It's been ages since I've watched the anime, but even years later I could never forget that cry, that scream layered with a metallic echo. I turned my head toward the sound. The man with the hole in his chest was screaming, shedding pitch-black tears. Normally, when someone eats a person, their face should be splattered with blood. Yet, instead of turning bright red, his face was being overtaken by a spreading whiteness. It wasn't the look of someone turning pale with fear. It looked more like a splash of white paint. To anyone watching, it was clear. A human was transforming into a hollow. Let's not get involved. It's not my business anyway, and getting involved only seems like it'll lead to bad things. Besides, if I stay here, I might get eaten and die, so I should get as far away as possible. If I just keep going, I'll run into something. Stealthily backing away, I turned my back on the first hollow born into this world and ran. Chapter 2. Time Zone. I ran like my life depended on it. At first, I thought I just needed to put enough distance between myself and that monster until it was out of sight. But every time I stopped to catch my breath, a hollow would appear. I'd bolt again, stop, and there'd be another one. I don't know how the hell the random encounter rate got this glitched, but every time I paused, a human was either turning into a hollow or one that had already donned its mask would leap out at me. I had no choice but to keep running for what felt like an eternity. Luckily, the universal rule of transformations, that both heroes and villains are immobile while they're changing, seemed to apply here too. Putting aside the ones that had already finished their transformation, I could easily give the slip to the people who were still in the middle of becoming hollows. Go ahead, call me a coward. Mock me for running away the moment I dropped into a manga world instead of standing my ground. I have no excuse. The fact is, I ran. But seriously, let's be real, how many people could actually square up against a screaming psychopath with a gaping hole in his chest who's busy devouring someone right in front of them? And it wasn't just that. If you stand still, a hollow at least twice your size charges at you with its eyes rolled back, desperate to take a bite out of your skull. You think you could just sit there and take it? Even Ichigo, the protagonist of this world, would have run. Well, assuming we're talking about the pre-Soul Reaper awakening Ichigo anyway. Actually, knowing that guy, he'd probably get some main character buff and hold out until Rukia arrived, or somehow manage to suppress the damn thing. But so what? I'm not some orange-haired protagonist. I am not a main character. I have no special powers, no innate talent. All I have is the knowledge that this world belongs to a manga called Bleach, along with some hazy memories of the characters and the plot. Sure, it's a bit ridiculous to complain about a lack of talent before I've even tried anything, but even Ichigo got his ass handed to him and was on the verge of death before Rukia saved him. Me? Could I really beat a hollow with my bare hands? I don't even have a stick, let alone a sword. All I have is information. But looking at the state of things around here, that information was currently about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. This is a total clusterfuck. The reason my knowledge of the original series was useless was simple. There were no Soul Reapers, that I thought they were just late, but I was wrong. I'd been running for at least 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and not a single Soul Reaper had shown their face. Wait, surely that can't be it. With that nagging thought, I hid and observed my surroundings. I saw souls with chains on their chests, living humans with no chains, and hollows with holes in their chests, all milling about together in a chaotic mess. That's when it hit me. It wasn't that the Soul Reapers were missing. It was that this was a timeline from before Soul Reapers even existed. I wondered if the people without chains might be Soul Reapers, so I watched them closely from the shadows, but I was wrong again. They were just ordinary living humans. How did I know? I saw one of the chainless people get devoured by a hollow, and suddenly a chain appeared on their chest. Well, since they were killed by a hollow, the chain shattered almost instantly and they turned into one themselves, but that's beside the point. The one thing I knew for certain, there are no Soul Reapers here. If my hypothesis was correct, it meant the Seriidii didn't exist. And if the Seriidii hadn't been founded yet, it meant I was at least 2,000 years away from the start of the original story. Maybe even longer. I didn't know the exact time frame. What I remembered were a few major incidents from the canon plot and the faces of my favorite characters, not how the world was built or the deep lore of its prehistory. If I knew that, I'd be the one writing Bleach. Wait a minute, a world where souls, living humans, and hollows all live together. Does that even make sense? It's been a while since I read the manga, but I remember the world being divided into 4 realms: the world of the living, Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and Hell. Souls go to Soul Society, hollows go to Hueco Mundo, sinners go to Hell, and the living stay in the world of the living. That much I recalled. Layered worlds are a common trope, and since I'd read Bleach until I was sick of it as a kid, I remembered the basics. But if this wasn't that, if this was a world where all those realms were one and the same, no way. I mean seriously, if this timeline is really from before the Soul Society or the world of the living were even created, just how much time am I going to have to spend here? The head captain was over 2,000 years old, so... No, wait. If there's no Soul Society, doesn't that mean the Soul King is still alive? How old is the Soul King? What about the Zero Division that guards him? Actually, even before that, the 5 noble families. I don't know any of it. Nothing comes to mind. Ha! Even though I thought I knew the settings, I'd only ever skimmed wikis for fun. No matter how much I racked my brain until it throbbed, no useful memories surfaced. All I knew for certain was that a staggering, mind-numbing amount of time remained until the start of the original series. A chill ran down my spine. I blinked, lightheaded, and slumped into a crouch. I had no idea what to do from here. First off, no suicide, and definitely no getting murdered. Actually, let's just scrap the idea of dying altogether. It'd be one thing if Soul Society existed, but it doesn't. I have no idea what happens if you die in a world like this. So, the only thing left to do is survival. Building enough strength to stay alive had to be the priority. I let out a heavy sigh that felt like it could sink into the earth and stood up. I wasn't sure what to do, but I figured I'd just start something. I certainly had nothing but time. Maybe I'll start by swinging a sword 10,000 times a day. It was an absurd plan, but since this wasn't reality but a manga world, maybe those impossible manga training methods would actually work. Alright, let's do this. I don't have a sword. Now that I think about it, yeah. I don't. Guess I'll start by swinging a branch. Chapter 3. Compromise. I couldn't afford any interruptions while I trained, so I set out to find a reasonably safe location that I didn't expect that reasonable search to take 3 full days, but since I eventually found a spot devoid of hollows, I wasn't in much of a position to complain. Where is this safe haven, free from the threat of hollows? It is a barren wasteland where I am the only thing left alive. At first, I was restless, constantly looking over my shoulder to see if a hollow was stalking me. But after spending half a day here, I understood. I realized why they weren't coming. There is nothing here for a hollow to eat. That is to say, there are no living humans or souls in this place. With food scattered everywhere else, there wasn't a single madman among them who would bother trekking all the way out to these desolate outskirts just to devour me. Of course, if some freak with a relentless obsession actually did show up, well, I'd just have to die. What else could I do? That kind of lunatic isn't the type you can just shake off once they've set their sights on you. Anyway, having secured a safe zone, I immediately threw myself into training. Though I call it training, it was nothing more than gripping a thick tree branch with both hands and swinging it with everything I had. Inspired by the legendary 10,000 punches of gratitude, I began my own 10,000 daily swings, albeit with a sword and a complete lack of gratitude, contrary to the grandiosity of the start. I failed miserably. The primary reason was simple: my body and mind couldn't withstand the sheer insanity of the task. Some might ask how hard it could possibly be to swing a oversized branch, especially since it wasn't even a real sword, but those people have no idea. Don't take my word for it. Go stand in one spot and swing just 1,000 times. I guarantee that before you finish, you'll be screaming, "Ah, this is absolute madness. Only a true psycho could do this." I feel like my forearms are going to explode. When I first picked up the wooden stick, I thought it would be a breeze. But after hitting the 1,500 swing mark, my mind changed on its OWN and my arms were trembling, the skin on my palms felt like it was peeling back, and my shoulders felt like they were being pulverized. To top it off, I was so out of breath I felt like I was going to choke. It felt like 2 or 3 hours had passed, but in reality it hadn't even been one. Just as I thought I must have surely reached 10,000, I realized I'd barely scraped past 1,000. In that moment, my motivation plummeted straight through the floor and into the abyss. If I'm in this state after a mere 1,000 swings, how was I supposed to reach 10,000? And I was supposed to do each one with perfect form and a heart full of gratitude? 10 times what I had just done. You truly cannot pull this off unless you possess an inhuman level of willpower. That's why I failed. Because my willpower is strictly average. Unless you're obsessed with the blade, obsessed with power, or have a crazy person standing over you, this training regimen is impossible. I'm gonna die. Seriously. Ah, wait. Had I already died? Seeing as there isn't a chain embedded in my chest, I might actually still be alive. Lost in idle thought, I exhaled a heavy sigh from the depths of my gut and collapsed flat onto the ground. This was the safe zone I'd found after running for my life from those hollows, knowing there was no need to worry about them here. The anxiety didn't even register, and I stared blankly at the sky for a while before rolling onto my side. Using my arm as a pillow, in my line of sight lay the wooden stick. Discarded on the dirt. Suddenly, a sense of injustice washed over me. It's strange. In manga and novels, everyone makes it look so easy. Why is it only me who can't do it? Wait, come to think of it, those characters suffered like hell to get where they were. Take that old man with the Hayakushi cannon. When he first started, he spent the entire day doing nothing but punching. Considering that, my failure was only natural. Besides, that old man was a master martial artist long before he started that training. Me? I'm just an ordinary guy with nothing to my name. It's only natural to fail. That thought brought me peace, but it also sparked a flicker of stubbornness. Was I really going to give up like this? Since I'd already started, shouldn't I at least see it through to the end? That kind of prideful stubbornness. Sigh, but even with that stubbornness, what could I do? What was I capable of? My body would break before I ever reached 10,000. What else could I do besides roll around on the ground in frustration? After blinking at the tree branch for a few moments, I braced my hands against the ground and slowly pushed myself up. I can do something at least. It's too painful to aim for 10,000 right away. Let's just try to hit 2,000 for now that I can increase the count slowly later on. After all, the one thing I have plenty of is time. Whether it takes a year, 2 years, or 10, I'll reach 10,000 swings a day eventually. Let's play the long game. Let's be patient. Having reached a compromise with myself, I stood up and gripped the wooden stick once more. Chapter 4. Ripple, what do you think is the best way to drive a person insane? That's right. It's torture. Of course, there are the crude methods, pulling out fingernails and toenails or ripping off limbs, but there are many other ways. Simply tickling someone until they can't breathe is enough to cause agonizing suffering. Off the top of my head, there's force feeding, waterboarding, tickle torture, and various others. Why are all these things considered torture? Pain? Certainly, pain plays a part. But that's not what I'm talking about. The reason torture is considered torture lies in repetition. Take force feeding as an example. A meal that fills your stomach just enough to leave you satisfied isn't torture, it's hospitality. Is that torture? No, but what if that satisfying meal is repeated? Over and over and over again, food is forced into you. What if the food in your stomach is being shoved down, fighting for space even before the previous bite can pass into the duodenum? When food is stuffed up to your esophagus and you can't swallow or spit it out, that's no longer hospitality. That's force-feeding torture. Even a simple act becomes torture when repeated. Pulling out a fingernail is the same. Pulling one and stopping isn't quite torture. But if you rip out every single fingernail and toenail, then it becomes torture. Pardon the rambling. Ultimately, what I want to say is that torture is the pain that stems from repetition. Based on that logic, I believe that training and discipline can also be considered a form of torture. Why else would swinging a goddamn tree branch be so agonizing? Ha. Ha. Shit. It's been about, since I started my 10,000 a day swings with a branch I'm not particularly grateful for. I don't really know. The surroundings are nothing but desert, and whether it's day or night, everything is hazy. My sense of time is completely shattered, so I don't know exactly how long has passed. Regardless, a significant amount of time must have gone by. If you were to ask if I've achieved anything in that time, I can confidently say that I have. First off, the time it takes to swing the branch once is now 6 seconds. I grip the end of the branch tightly with both hands as if holding a sword, lift it above my head, and then strike straight down. 6 seconds for that whole process. For the record, it originally took 1 second. You might think I've actually regressed, but you'd be wrong. Originally, I didn't care about the grip, the swing path, or the distribution of power. I just swung it wildly like a child playing with a toy. Swinging a sword that ignorantly, it took less than an hour to do 1,000 reps. For example, it's like putting a whole uncracked egg on top of raw rice and insisting it's egg over rice. Who couldn't do it that way? Any random person could. Even just flicking your wrist would fill 1,000 reps in no time. Sigh. Anyway, now that a single slash takes 6 seconds, it takes about 2 hours to complete 1,000 swings. The reason I say about 2 hours instead of exactly an hour and 40 minutes is that I'm only human. If it gets too hard during training, I set the branch down and take a break. What? What are you looking at? I'm human. I'm not some manga character. How the hell am I supposed to swing a branch for 18 hours straight? In the first place, if I had that kind of mental fortitude, I would have crushed that hollow skull on the spot the moment I first saw it. Anyway, right. Well, I'm much better than when I first started training. At first, even though I'd set out to finish 2,000 reps before resting, I'd toss the branch aside after 1,800, complaining that I couldn't take it anymore. Compared to then, being able to swing 3,000 times in one sitting is a massive improvement. Of course, my habit of whining every time I do it hasn't changed. No, it's actually gotten worse. I can't do this anymore. Just because the body grows doesn't mean the mind or the attitude toward life grows with it. I really can't do this, goddammit. Exactly what kind of shit is lodged in the brains of people who enjoy this kind of torture? Is it because they're manga characters? Because they're programmed that way? I wish I could tinker with my own character settings. If I could, I would have set myself as someone with incredible perseverance who overcomes all adversity. You know, the classic shonen manga protagonist concept. But the current me? My perseverance isn't incredible, my quittance is. I quit because it's hard, I quit because it's boring. Pretty soon I'll probably quit my own life. Ha. I must be bored considering I'm spouting all this nonsense. Staring up at the hazy sky and blinking, I slowly stood up. Better get back to swinging the stick, I don't wah. NT2. It's hard. It's painful. It's insanity. It's torture that I complain like that, yet I pick up the branch again. Why do I bother going through this struggle when I could just give up? Why have I kept swinging this branch despite all the complaining? Because there is nothing else to do here. Truly. There is absolutely nothing. Because this world is, in a sense, absolute perfection. Think I'm joking? I'm not. Since there is no life and no death, the concepts of victory and defeat cannot even exist. Therefore, no one loses. But because of that, everyone is powerless. No one regresses, so there is no fear. Therefore, there is only stagnation. Everyone is perfect, so there is no need to build relationships with others. Therefore, there is only severance. The only beings with enough intelligence to hold a conversation are those hollow bastards who, consumed by their own void, couldn't stand the emptiness and resorted to devouring people. Am I supposed to strike up a friendly chat with them? Hey, it's a long road ahead, care for a talk? Give me a break. Dialogue? With creatures that lead with their maws rather than their words? It's a miracle just not to get eaten. That's why I swing this branch. Even though it's incredibly dull, miserably exhausting, offers zero sense of accomplishment, and makes me feel like a pathetic idiot. Because with every single swing, my posture improves just a tiny bit. Because even as my palms tear, my progress grows just a little. Because as my calluses harden, I feel myself becoming a bit tougher too. Because it is only through that process that I feel truly alive. I really fucking hate this. To keep from going insane, to remain alive, I repeat this torturous action today as well. That it has been approximately 1 year by my internal clock since I began swinging this branch. That I have cast aside the past version of myself that would give up before finishing the count, and finally succeeded in swinging the branch 10,000 times in a single day. And the moment I completed that 10,000th swing, within this world that was like a lake without a single stir, drip, for the first time a ripple formed. Chapter 5. Change. The moment the first ripple appeared in the world, perfection cracked. The ring of the endless cycle shattered, and completeness was transformed into imperfection. The catalyst was death.no. It was not merely death, but the total erasure of an existence. Not the first murder, but the first erasure. The so-called eradication. Looking down at the great hollow turning to dust beneath his feet, he slowly closed and opened his eyes. The world that had stood still, the great ring, bore an indelible wound as it began to turn once more. As is the nature of a broken wheel, the cracks in its rim caused it to crumble further with every single rotation. Complete erasure beyond life and death. In a world that had ground to a halt. A being appeared, or rather, a phenomenon manifested. It was the moment of the Soul King's birth. I noticed the anomaly the second I finished my 10,000th swing, screamed, "Fuck this, I'm done," and collapsed onto my back. Since I don't need to eat, I just lie down and sleep once my training is over. Training and sleep. Just those two things. When you repeat such a sickeningly simple lifestyle for nearly a year, you notice changes even if you don't want to. Wind? First of all, there was no way I was mistaken. It's impossible not to notice it when it's cooling down your overheated body and drying your sweat. In a stagnant, unchanging world, any shift stands out that much more. You're forced to notice, because in a world where the wind never blew, a breeze had begun to stir. Where is it coming from? Finding the source of a wind blowing from a single direction wasn't hard. I looked around, saw the sand dunes being swept to the right, and turned my head to the left. That way, huh? Like a thirsty man wandering for water, I was naturally drawn to the first change this world had ever shown me. But I was also a little scared. That was the direction I had fled from to avoid the hollows. Running blindly toward a place infested with hollows just because I felt a change was a bit of a stretch. Wow, change. Something finally shifted. This shit-tier game finally got a patch. Imagine running over there without a thought and bumping into a hollow. I'd be headed straight for a casket. Not a nice one made of paulownia wood either, but a coffin made of a hollow's gut after being chewed into tiny pieces. Damn it, I have no choice. I'm curious, but going there means death. But if I don't go, it's going to bug me forever. So much so that I probably wouldn't even be able to finish another 10,000 overhead swings. Sigh. This is driving me crazy, seriously. I scratched my head aggressively and looked down at my tree branch. What should I do? Should I take the risk and go? Or should I just stay here swinging this branch until I'm confident I can take on a hollow? As I stared at the branch with a wavering heart, unable to decide, snap. The branch, which had remained perfectly fine through hundreds of thousands of swings, snapped as if it were a lie.in a stagnant world without change. It was an unbreakable object. Now it had broken with satisfying finality. The shift in the world I had been vaguely sensing manifested right before my eyes. Death, destruction, consumption.it was the moment the eternity of the endless cycle was shattered.as if it had suddenly received the weight of all the wear and tear it should have suffered until now. The two pieces of the branch crumbled into dust within my hands. I stared at the wood that had returned to a handful of sand and scratched my head again. I guess I have to go. Now. When the world hands you a justification as blatant as this, you have no choice but to go. Isn't it a bit much to push me in the back just because I hesitated for a bit? Couldn't they have given me some time to worry, like saying, "Please take your time to think it over and go whenever you're ready"? Phew, I let out a deep sigh and looked in the direction the wind was blowing. Fine, let's just go for a bit. I'll just check out what's happening, and if it looks dangerous, I'll grab another branch and haul ass out of there. With that resolve, I began to walk slowly. I wondered how much had changed, and how much more would change from now on. Finally, change was happening. Time was actually flowing. I was confused by a mix of anticipation and a vague sense of dread, but it didn't feel bad, so I continued to march forward. After crossing the desert-like terrain for a long time, I stepped onto land that felt more like a grassland, and the surroundings began to grow dark. The sun was setting. Ah. So there's a night here that I couldn't tell back in the desert because it was night there all day long. Chapter 6. Run for your life roaming around at night is Dongay.
Look, if you've actually made it this far into the video and you're still here, come on then, hit subscribe. And honestly, if you think a friend of yours would like this, go on and share it with them. It really helps out. Right, I'm done. I'll get out of your hair now so you can get back to the good stuff. But seriously, stick around till the end. It's well worth it.
Rouse. That is basic common sense. Of course, since the advent of artificial lighting, the night has become quite safe. But this is a world where even Edison and Tesla haven't been born yet, let alone modern street lamps. If there had been a moon, I might have caught a glimpse of my surroundings, but for some reason the moon wasn't out tonight. I couldn't see a single inch in front of my face. No lamps, no moon, deep night, no light source. With all these factors combined, forget the inherent danger of the night, I couldn't even move because I couldn't see what was right in front of me. In the end, the only thing I could do was grope along the ground, searching for a halfway decent place to take a stand. Ugh, shit. I can't see a damn thing. I felt like I had gone blind, and I guess this is why people in the old days never traveled at night. How could anyone move around in this level of pitch black? It was so dark that not even a beast with night vision could navigate this void, let alone a human. Should I start a fire? As I crawled along the ground, I managed to scavenge a couple of tree branches. I debated whether I should try to light one, but I decided against it. I could probably get a fire going if I tried, but starting a fire in this absolute darkness, there was no better way to draw aggro than that. The moment I lit that flame, hollows would swarm from all directions. I wasn't crazy enough to signal them with a beacon. I should just be satisfied with finding 2 decent weapons. Scratching my head as I felt around the area, my fingers brushed against a texture that felt like wood. I blinked into the void. I'll just lean against this and rest for a bit. I wasn't exhausted enough to sleep, so I just closed my eyes while leaning my back against the trunk. God, it's really dark. How is there zero difference between my eyes being open and closed? To me, someone who remembered modern civilization, a world where the night was never truly dark, this level of blackness didn't evoke fear, but rather a sense of wonder. I spent a few moments opening and closing my eyes, experiencing this impossibly dark world. Then, in that very instant, a burst of blue light so bright it made my eyes sting erupted from the void. Flash. Reflexively, I squeezed my eyes shut, but the blue light that flared from the distance had already seared my retinas. Gah! Fuck! My eyes! I covered my face with both hands, reeling from a pain similar to that urban legend of looking at a smartphone screen on max brightness right after waking up, which supposedly has the power of a flashbang. I scowled, massaging my throbbing eyes as if they'd just been punched. What the hell was that just now? Where did that blue light come from? Ugh, my eyes! Massaging my right eye, I peeked through my other eye toward the direction where the light had burst. While I was still blinking to clear my vision, wondering what was happening, the blue light flared again. Ugh, that's incredibly flashy. I didn't know what was over there, but one thing was certain. The direction the light was coming from was the place where the change had begun, and I had no proof that the light was the catalyst for the change, but my intuition told me so. The source was practically screaming, "I'm the culprit." It would be weirder not to notice it. Furthermore, whoever was over there was detonating pillars of light that size without pause. A person like that couldn't be ordinary. Whether it was the change or something else, it had to be started by whoever was causing that light. Is it an Reincar? Did Reincars even exist in this era? I didn't know, however. It'll be game over if I go there. I was certain of that. The only silver lining was that the light was bursting from a location quite far from where I stood. Right. Let's get the hell out of here. Nothing good would come from getting involved in that. I should just go back and focus on swinging the branches I just picked up. But that light, wait, why does it feel like it's getting closer? They say it's always too late by the time you realize something is wrong. That saying was spot on. Wait? Oh shit. The blue light, which had been erupting sporadically without a clear direction, was now heading exactly toward me. Don't come any closer. The speed was insane. Every time I blinked, it leaped closer. It felt like the bastard was moving faster than the speed of light. I said, "Stay the hell away from me." I screamed, but just like a certain boss who could never reach the truth of death, the light approaching me showed no intention of stopping. I'm fucked. The moment that realization hit, I squeezed out every bit of strength I had, down to my very last drop, and bolted. In that moment, I ran alongside the light, proving Zeno's paradox myself. Well, not actual light, of course. I'm talking about that blue light from earlier. If I could move at the actual speed of light, I would have time-traveled by now. Chapter 7. Soul King. What is Zeno's paradox? It refers to a situation where one can get closer and closer, yet never truly reach the destination. Actually, there was a more complex explanation involving Achilles' heel and a rabbit, or maybe it was Achilles and a tortoise. I don't really remember. Essentially, it's best to think of it as something similar to Satoru Gojo's limitless technique. Why do I remember Gojo's technique but forget the difficult philosophical explanation? Well, paradoxes are hard and boring, but manga is fun. Remembering it is only natural. But seriously, how long does this bastard plan on chasing me? The blue pillar of light, which had been drawing closer ever since I started running, was now near enough that I could see a human silhouette at its center whenever I glanced back. Someone was definitely in there, but I couldn't make out their face due to the blinding backlighting. If I could just see their face, I might be able to act like I knew them, but they just kept getting closer without revealing their identity. It left me with no options. No, seriously, why the hell are they chasing me? Stop already, god damn it. Thinking I was finally within earshot, I screamed out. But they didn't seem to have any intention of stopping, almost as if they were dead set on killing me. They stopped. They stopped so easily it made all my previous efforts to escape feel utterly futile. Since the other party had stopped, I supposed I should too. I planted my feet to kill my momentum. However, unlike the owner of the Pillar of Light, who came to a dead halt in midair like a paused video, I was just a regular person subject to the laws of physics. The moment I jammed one foot into the ground as a brake, the law of inertia took over. Instead of stopping, my body lurched forward. I face-planted directly into the dirt and proceeded to roll across the ground in a pathetically undignified display. Ugh, fuck my nose. I felt like my nose had definitely burst. Prodding my stinging nose with my hand, I felt a strange moisture on the back of my palm. I flinched as I checked my hand, but fortunately it wasn't a nosebleed. I wiped the moisture off on my clothes and pulled myself up from the ground. Since I had just performed several dozen forward somersaults per second, my vision was spinning, but I managed to stand. Honestly, my stomach was churning so badly I wanted to drop to the floor and throw up, but I gritted my teeth and stood tall. Ugh, I can't. The dizziness was too much. I sat back down and clutched my throbbing forehead. There's such a thing as reasonably dizzy, but this, as I sat there massaging the bridge of my nose, I heard the sound of footsteps. Thud. Thud. The sound of someone treading on damp soil. When the dizziness finally subsided enough for me to open my eyes, I found myself locked in a stare with a man possessing bizarre eyes. It was strange. The surroundings were pitch black, yet the man's appearance was unervingly clear. His pupils were split into four, looking as though a cross had been etched into each eye. For a moment I could only blink, wondering what kind of freak he was. Then my brow furrowed as I looked at a face that seemed Incredibly familiar, I'm not exaggerating. I had definitely seen this face somewhere before. It wasn't that I'd seen it so often that it was familiar, but rather that it was so unique I could never forget it. Ah, I remembered. The Soul King. Yes. I remembered now that it's the Soul King. The man standing before me was none other than that Soul King. The guy who left a massive mess for everyone else to clean up, got himself sealed, had his limbs hacked off, and then spent the rest of eternity using his special ability, standing perfectly still, until he finally died a hollow death. So. This is what the Soul King felt like when he was alive. I continued to blink at his appearance. Aside from his eyes, which were strange enough to warrant the word grotesque, he looked surprisingly refined. The Soul King, who had been standing silently, finally spoke. What are you looking at? I am asking what you are seeing in me. Perhaps he caught me daydreaming. He repeated the question with a stoic expression. How was I supposed to answer that? I couldn't exactly be honest and say, I was thinking about the future where you do nothing and then die. Who would just sit there and take it after being told they were going to die? Some people might just shrug it off and think I'm crazy, but others would be furious and ask what kind of bullshit I was spewing. I end this situation, where I didn't know how the man in front of me would react. Better to keep it vague than to be honest. After a moment's thought, I spoke. I am looking at you. You look at me, yet you do not see me. With those words, the Soul King slowly closed and opened his eyes. After staring at me for an uncomfortably long time, honestly, it was bordering on burdensome, the Soul King made a sudden declaration. I see nothing. See what? You are the first one in whom my eyes see absolutely nothing. I scratched my head at his remark. Well, it's so dark out here, it's only natural you can't see anything. I knew that wasn't what he meant, but the words slipped out anyway. The Soul King looked down at me silently for a moment, then slowly looked up at the sky, his eyes blinking rhythmically. Is that so? Responding in a calm voice, the Soul King raised his left hand. Then the world flipped on its head, and it was suddenly morning. Whoa, what the fuck? Seriously? A hollow laugh escaped me. Even though the source of that power was right in front of my face, I couldn't help but swear that I glanced at the Soul King, startled by my own outburst, but fortunately he didn't seem to care. Or maybe he just didn't know those were curse words. The Soul King, who had been looking up at the sky in silence, turned his head back toward me. I still see nothing. Is his eyesight defective? Well, those eyes do look like they're just for show. I swallowed the words that nearly escaped my mouth. Chapter 8. The Soul King is... Ugh, how should I describe this? An audience with the Soul King? A meeting? Yeah, a conversation. My conversation with the Soul King has dragged on for quite a while. The reason the word conversation didn't come to mind at first wasn't because I'm senile, but because I simply couldn't conceive of whatever the hell we were doing as an actual dialogue. Why are you not seen? I told you I don't know. Now back off already. And why have you been talking down to me since a while ago? I appeared here before you did, you know? That makes me the senior. Respect your elders, kid. Ever heard of it? Truly curious. There was nothing that could escape my sight until now. Don't you know there's a pecking order? Ah, wait, there's no flowing water here, so you wouldn't know that proverb. God damn it. If anyone could identify this as a conversation, they deserve a medal. B follows A. 1 + 1 = 2. A conversation is about giving one to get one back. But this guy? I say A, and he suddenly brings up Z. I ask about 1 + 1, and he starts proving a complex function out of nowhere. I try to give him something, and he just slaps my hand away. How the hell is this a conversation? Sigh. I looked at the Soul King, who kept muttering, I can't see you, beside me. With a heavy sigh, I stood up from my spot. It was about time to swing my branch again. It's not that I'm obsessed with training. It's just that if I sit here doing nothing with a lunatic muttering in my ear, I feel like I'm going to lose my mind too. I have no choice. Starting training just to keep from going insane, that actually matches my initial reason for starting. Is this what they call a thematic circularity or something? No. This isn't the end, so it's probably not a circular conclusion. Haha, listening to myself spout this nonsense. I think I'm already halfway to the madhouse. Get it together. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the tree branch firmly with both hands. I closed my eyes and cleared my mind. This was the ritual I performed before every training session. It wasn't about hardening my resolve, but rather visualizing the swing in my mind. It's that thing they call tracing the sword path. Though since I'm holding a branch, I guess I'm tracing a branch path. Wait, does that make me a branch path master? Zoro. Saying it like that makes me feel like I should be holding one in each hand and another in my mouth while flailing around. Anyway, after visualizing the path in my head, I took a deep breath in, exhaled, and swung the branch just like any other day. For better or worse, the Soul King did nothing but watch me silently from the side. But this is incredibly distracting. I tried my best to ignore him, but some things just can't be willed away. Can you please stop staring? I cannot see. Whatever. Do what you want. Talking to him was like preaching to a wall. Caring about it only stressed me out that I decided to just stop paying attention. Of course, ignoring him didn't make me disappear, nor did it make the Soul King's oppressive gaze go away. Let's pretend I'm not here. There is no one here that I don't exist. The Soul King doesn't exist. There's nothing but the void. I swung the sword with my eyes closed 1,000 times, 2,000, 3,000, then 5,000, and finally 10,000 and I couldn't finish it. God damn it, if a state of no mind was that easy to achieve, everyone and their mother would have attained enlightenment by now. Ultimately, I was so distracted by the Soul King's gaze that I didn't even reach 3,000 reps before I snapped the branch in frustration that it's his fault. Seriously, everything is the Soul King's fault. But really, it actually was his fault. I'd feel like choking if someone watched me just eating a meal, so imagine trying to train while some godlike entity just stands there staring at you. It's more than just a little annoying, for fuck's sake. Fine. Fine. I'll tell you. I just have to tell you what I saw, right? Only then did the Soul King finally shut his mouth. It wasn't hard to realize that his silence was a prompt to continue. I saw a future where you die. Happy now? Having finally blurted out the words I never intended to say, I slightly shifted my stance, ready to bolt at any moment if things looked like they were going south. I was prepared to run and never look back. But contrary to my fears, the Soul King showed no reaction. Well, he did react in a way. Is that so? If nodding with a completely expressionless face counts as a reaction, then he reacted. Stunned by a response far flatter than I expected, I relaxed my flight posture and turned back to face him properly. The Soul King stared at the ground with half-closed eyes, appearing deep in thought, before raising his head to look at me again. Are you present in that place? No. I shook my head immediately. What I had spoken of was the conclusion of a manga, not a story of this reality. There's no way I'd be there. As I answered with a shake of my head, the Soul King paused for a long time before finally nodding. Then the end you have witnessed and the end I have beheld, they coincide. Okay. If there is no friction in our respective paths, then that is sufficient. What is he even talking about? While I stared at him, wondering what kind of cryptic bullshit he was spouting, the Soul King looked up at the sky for a moment and then turned his back to me. I shall simply continue to do what I must, so you should continue to do what you must as well. With those words, the Soul King turned and walked away with leisurely steps. He chased me down like he was going to kill me, and all he had to say was, "Oh, I guess we have different majors. You do your thing, I'll go do mine." What the hell is wrong with that guy? Chapter 9. The Soul King and his lackey. About a year had passed since my encounter with the Soul King. Not much had changed since then, though I had at least found a decent place to settle down. It wasn't anything grand like a perfect geomantic site, but it was a spot with a fair amount of trees and just enough water. Unlike that gloomy place to the north that held nothing but sand, the south experienced actual day and night. That alone made keeping track of the date significantly easier. Of course, while the cycle of light and dark helped, the biggest help in tracking time was the surrounding trees. You might wonder how a tree helps count days, but it's actually quite effective. You know that tally system you often see in American crime thrillers, drawing 4 vertical lines on a wall and then striking through them with a diagonal? By carving those into the trees, keeping count became a breeze. Plus, I could lean my back against them when resting, use the roots poking above ground as a pillow when sleeping, and replenish my supply of branches whenever I needed. If there was ever a giving tree, this one was well on its way to total bankruptcy. Actually, wait. The tree in that story literally let someone cut down its trunk and eventually gave up its stump. That's real bankruptcy. I guess I can't really compare my situation to that level of sacrifice. In any case, today marked the 365th day since I started carving tallies into the wood and began my training. It was exactly 1 year to the day since I thought, oh, something's happening over there? That looks unusual. I should check it out. only to end up in a one-on-one interview with the Soul King. It's only natural, but reaching the 1-year mark didn't trigger any special event. It would have been great to get some first anniversary perks, maybe a specialized Zanpakuto or a celestial body reward, but unfortunately life isn't full of such conveniences. Then again, it would be even weirder if something suddenly popped out just because a year had passed. Still a bit of a shame. Sigh, I can't believe they really didn't give me anything. What a cold, stingy world. With a deep sigh, I carved the 365th notch into the tree and picked up a branch for today's regimen. After doing this for a year, I'd grown considerably compared to the early days. When I first started, I would collapse wheezing before I even hit 2,000 swings. Now I'd grown enough to complete the full 10,000 without a single break, and that's with proper form for every single one of them, mind you. Alright, fine. Honestly, about 1,000 of them might have been a bit sloppy. What? So what? Isn't the point just to hit 10,000? Regardless of my excuses, the fact remained that I was much better than before. Feeling that progress, one way or another, gave me a sense of pride. And I also learned how to clear my head while training. It wasn't some high state of enlightenment or zen no mind. I literally just stopped thinking about everything. It felt like training while half asleep with my brain turned off. The strange thing was that even when I trained like a vegetable, the training still worked perfectly. Wow, auto battle is the best. *********** 980th day since I began my training. In terms of years, I was fast approaching the 3-year mark. I had grown immensely during that time. Branches eventually became too light, so I moved on to wooden rods. Now, even those felt weightless, so I had taken to swinging a massive wooden club that weighed about 10 kilograms. At this point, the wooden club was thicker than my own leg. I still couldn't bang out 10,000 swings in an hour like a certain chairman I knew from manga, but through sheer grit and effort, I had managed to shave it down to under 4 hours. But hey, if I can finish 10,000 swings in 4 hours while wielding a 10 kilograms log, isn't that, pretty good? Right, whatever. Since my training finished earlier, I ended up with extra time, which I used to carve wood. I wasn't carving Buddhist statues or anything. I was just tired of sleeping on the bare ground, so I started making things like a bed, chair, and desk for myself. And I tried to see if I could fell a tree using a mere branch, but I wasn't quite at that level yet. I could chip away at the bark, but it wouldn't actually cut through. I'll pull it off soon. Who cares if I can't do it right now? Time is the one thing I have in abundance. Actually, it's so abundant it's a problem. Sigh. Letting out a sigh that had now become part of my daily routine, I approached the tree to carve the 980th mark. I hadn't thought about it until now, but looking at it, I was running out of space on this tree. There was a bit of room left, but it looked like it would be full in about 20 days. I could make a ladder and carve higher up, but there were plenty of trees around, so there was no need to go that far. Once this one is full, I'll move to the next tree. Or wait. Maybe I should use this chance to head further south? Now that the Soul King has started his eradication and the hollow count has dropped significantly, that might not be a bad idea. Scritch, scratch. After carving the 980th mark, I prepared to swing my club as usual. Well, I tried to, but I felt something approaching and halted mid-motion. It's not that I'd learned some high-level sensory technique, but this area was the middle of nowhere. I was the only thing here. No humans would ever come this far out, and ever since the Soul King passed through, no hollows came near, either because of the lingering spiritual pressure or because they realized there was nothing to eat in these boondocks. So, if someone approached, I couldn't help but notice. The ground wasn't vibrating, so at the very least it wasn't a hollow. That meant there was only one entity who would bother coming out to a remote place like this. But why are there two? I could tell one was the Soul King, but who was the one waddling along beside him? Is he an attendant? Since he's a king, did he bring a eunuch or a minister? Regardless, the appearance of someone new felt fresh. I lowered my club, sat on my chair, and waited for my guests. Soon, with the sound of rustling grass, the Soul King emerged, accompanied by a young boy. "Welcome, Soul King." I greeted him with a bit of friendly familiarity, but no response came back. I didn't expect one, but it was still a bit bitter. If you aren't going to talk, you could at least give a nod. "You're making me look awkward here." I smacked my lips and scratched my head, glancing at him repeatedly, but the Soul King remained silent, merely observing the things I had built. "These are entirely new things." The words that finally came from the Soul King's tightly closed mouth carried a subtle hint of admiration. Even though his pitch and tempo were so steady, he sounded more like a machine than a person. I could feel it. "What is Wondering what had caught the man's interest, I followed his gaze. He was looking at the chair, the desk, and the integrated school desk I'd made just for fun. That cursed school desk. I'd left it there to use as firewood later and just hadn't gotten around to burning it yet. Those are the chair, the desk, and the all-in-one desk? Or are you talking about the bed? It felt like the kid was about to say something that I turned my head toward the boy who followed the Soul King, and our eyes met. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with shock. Come to think of it, his face looks familiar. Someone in the Bleach universe who looks like this. As I pondered where I'd seen his face before, the boy opened his mouth. So, how do you know the names of those things? Huh. I scratched my head at the random question. The boy stared at me intently with his large eyes as if he wouldn't back down until I gave him an answer. His eyes were already naturally big, which was slightly intimidating, but being stared down by them so fixedly was genuinely uncomfortable. However, his question was quite difficult to answer, forcing me to hesitate for a moment. But the boy, seemingly unsatisfied with my hesitation or perhaps frustrated by the brief silence, spoke again. I shall ask you once more. How is it that you know the names of those things? The words were the same, but the voice now carried frustration and irritation rather than surprise. Man, what an impatient brat! I smacked my lips and gave him an honest answer. If you ask me how I know something I already know, I don't really have an answer for you. The boy seemed to have lost his words at my response, simply staring at me blankly. The Soul King, the nameless boy, and me. There were several people present, but no one opened their mouth. I mean, why are you not reacting after being the one who asked the question? Chapter 10. The caller of true names. I realized my purpose the very instant I manifested in this world. Realized? No, it would be more accurate to say that it was bestowed upon me. Those without a name do not know their own true name, and thus they do not know their place. Without a name, they possess no sense of purpose, no goal. They are mere existences lingering pointlessly in the void. That is why I came to be E.to contemplate the true names, suited to the nameless things of this world, to bestow those names, and to ensure they function according to the weight of those names. That I stood upon this earth charged with the duty of making them live lives worthy of their names, lives suited to their stations. Thus, from the moment my eyes opened, I traveled the world naming all things. From the things that could be seen to the things that remained hidden. With these eyes, there was no name I could not perceive. The days passed in a blur of endless work. The primordial world was overflowing with the nameless point. One day, while I was working without regard for day or night, it arrived. Your name is Spirea prenifolia, the Metasuite. Though the naming of invisible phenomena was complete, there was still much to label, and so I wandered through the dark and light alike. That was when it appeared that it stood before me as naturally as if it had been there since the dawn of time. That I could not see a name. No, it wasn't that it lacked a name. It was quite literally that the name could not be seen, a phenomenon I had never experienced. Wonder? Yes, it was wonder. It was also the fear and confusion that stems from the unknown. To be bestowing names upon my own emotions even in a situation like this. I truly am quite mad, aren't I? With that thought, I locked eyes with the unknown before me. He was looking at me, yet he was not. Those eyes were fixed upon something else entirely, something beyond me. There was no way to explain it. Just as I instinctively knew names were visible to these eyes, I knew this as well. This being's true name was something that could not be glimpsed from my current horizon. I swallowed dryly and waited for him to speak. His gaze finally snapped to mine. Thou who callest upon the name, thou who namest all phenomena. Just as I had bestowed names upon the lowliest of creatures, he bestowed a name upon me. I grant thee the name Jin Myong Ho, the Monako. The name he granted was carved into my very soul like a wedge. The world already visible became even sharper. I could now see, however faintly, the state of things before their names existed and what they would become after. The moment I realized the power of the name he had granted me, I instinctively lowered my head at the sheer gulf between us. I bowed as naturally as a subject prostrates before a king. Follow me. As you command. A mere grain of sand like myself could not defy his Majesty's will, for one who has been named is destined to be drawn to the one who named them. I followed in His Majesty's footsteps. I knew not where we were headed. I simply moved according to his will, occasionally naming the nameless things we passed. Like a vassal serving a sovereign, I trailed behind him. Then one day the king, who had been merely wandering the world, halted his steps and looked in a certain direction. The king's brow furrowed, whether out of displeasure or to focus his sight on something difficult to perceive, I could not tell. Whatever had disturbed his majesty's equilibrium, it was certainly no ordinary existence. "Is that where you intend to go?" "Indeed." With those words, the king turned and began to walk. If drifting through the sky can be called walking, that is. The place we arrived at was a gargantuan sea of trees. The height of the trees was staggering, their thickness immense beyond measure, and furthermore, trees that devour spiritual power. It was a forest filled with malicious trees that could drain the spiritual power from one's entire body in an instant just by being near. For a fleeting moment, I nearly lost consciousness. Ugh! I had to exert such strength that my eyes trembled just to maintain my sanity. What could possibly exist in such a place? Was there truly something alive in this living hell besides these trees? It seemed impossible. "My king, what exactly is here?" "Something that cannot be seen," I asked, but the king's reply was utterly shocking. An existence that even the king's eyes could not see? What kind of monster could it be? I tried to ask more about this unseen thing, but the king stepped into the forest before I could open my mouth. A vassal cannot fail to follow where his king leads. Swallowing my dread, I followed him into the heart of the woods. Curiously, however, the moment we crossed the boundary of the forest, the trees stopped draining spiritual power. In fact, they were emitting it. No, that wasn't right. It wasn't simple emission, reflux. They were regurgitating it because they couldn't handle the excessive amount of spiritual power stored within them. Unlike the trees on the outskirts that sucked power to survive, these trees spat it out for the very same reason. They were clearly the same species, yet how could they be so different? Stunned by this revelation, I shook my frozen legs and hurried to catch up with the king. We finally reached a single massive tree. Beneath it sat a man, resting upon something yet to be named. Wait. How could such a thing even exist right now? While my eyes darted around in confusion, the man sitting on the let out a chuckle and gave a casual wave. "Yo, Soul King. Welcome." "Soul King?" That wasn't my name. Then the existence he was referring to as Soul King was. The words were few, but the information they carried was overwhelming. Smack. These are entirely new things. I snapped out of my trance at the sound of the Soul King's voice and looked around. "What is?" The man spoke, glancing around before letting out a small exclamation as he looked at the Since those things didn't have names yet, I opened my mouth to designate them. "Those are but the names of those objects left the man's mouth first." "Are you talking about the chair and desk? The integrated desk? Or the bed?" In that instant, names were bestowed upon the chair, the desk, the integrated desk, and the bed. Names were given to things that shouldn't even exist in this world yet. Or rather, names were given to things that existed here but definitely should not be present in the now. That was shocking enough, but what truly staggered me was that this man had bestowed names just as I did. Staring at him blankly, I approached him as if possessed and asked, "How is it that you know the names of those things?" "Huh." The man blinked, appearing flustered by my question. I knew my behavior was rude, but I had to get an answer from him, no matter what. If this man possessed the same power and ability as I did, then my power, which I thought was unique, might become meaningless, nothing more than a triviality. "I shall ask once more. How do you know the names of those things?" The man scratched his head as if troubled, smacked his lips, and finally spoke. "If you ask me how I know something I already know, I don't really have an answer for you. Before their names are called, things merely exist. When I call their name, they finally gain significance in their existence. But then, who creates those names? Who crafts the names that the one who calls them will speak? Jin Myung-ho. The one who calls the true name. It was only then that I realized why the Soul King had bestowed this name upon me. The moment I heard the man's answer, my mind went blank, and I found myself unable to react at all. Chapter 11, I'm sure he'll figure it out on his own. After the brat approached me so boldly to ask how I knew his name, I just told him, I already know it, so what? Whether he was sulking or not, the kid didn't say anything for a while, just blankly staring at the chair and desk I'd made. What's with him? Is he supposed to be some kind of future genius inventor? Is he shocked because I already built something that only exists in his head? I suppose for a kid that could be quite a blow. A brat's world is small after all. Yeah. It happens a lot. Stay strong, boy. The world is vast. You're going to experience things much worse than this. Anyway, I swear I've seen this kid somewhere before. Soul King. Who is this kid? I asked, but as usual, the Soul King gave no response, ignored again. Maybe he'll listen if I give him a good thumping that I've been training my ass off, and I feel like I might actually have a shot at this point. I slowly reached for the wooden club leaning against the tree and lightly loosened my wrist. No, beating a guy with a club is a bit much, even for me. Let's just go with a punch. If we're friends, I can at least do that much. It's funny to call him a friend after only seeing him twice, but showing up unannounced like this is basically an invitation to be buddies. You know, like how kids just barge in and yell, "Hey, come out and play." It's the same thing. Technically, that's visiting without an appointment too. Is hitting him still a bit much? I'll just give his shoulder a light tap. I approached the Soul King, who was preoccupied with the trees I'd carved tally marks into, and gave his shoulder a light tap. Or rather, I tried to give him a light tap. Asterisk asterisk boom. Or at least that would have been the sound if a hexagonal, translucent barrier hadn't manifested on the Soul King's shoulder to stop my hand. And I blinked, startled by a sound far louder than I'd anticipated. Only then did I realize, my strength was far greater than I thought. I mean, if I could swing a 10-kilogram club 10,000 times in just 4 hours, obviously I'd be that strong. I had no one to compare myself to, so I forgot. I scratched my eyebrow and turned around at the sound of a crash. The kid, who had been spacing out behind me, had fallen backward, his already large eyes wide with shock from the noise. The Soul King turned his head toward me slowly, like a mannequin. It wasn't that he was surprised, that's just how slow his movements were. Why did you attempt to strike me? I wasn't attacking. If I really intended to attack, I would have used that wooden club over there. You speak truth. Then for what purpose did you swing your hand? You were so fixated on the trees that I was just going to give you a light tap. That is not what one calls light. He was right, so I had nothing to say and just scratched my head. I really did fail to control my power pretty spectacularly. I should start practicing power regulation from now on. All the trees around here are so damn hard that I thought I could just hit things, but I guess not. Sorry. My power control is still unrefined. Then it is no matter. The Soul King said that and returned his gaze to the trees. No, he wasn't just looking, he was examining them. I honestly don't know what's so fascinating that he's staring so hard. I stood beside him, crossing my arms, and joined him in staring at the wood. What is the significance of these carvings? It's the date. If it is the date, what is the standard for a day? A day is 24 hours. And the standard for those 24 hours? 24 units of 1 hour. 1 hour is 60 minutes. 1 minute is 60 seconds. I figured he'd keep asking if I stayed quiet, so I just laid it all out at once. Only then did the Soul King shut his mouth and turn from me back to the trees. If one accumulates so many days, a group of 7 is 1 set, a week. 4 weeks is 28 days a month. 12 of those months make a year. Wait, no. Just think of roughly 365 days as a year. Knowing he'd keep digging, I cut him off and explained everything in advance. The Soul King, who had fallen silent again while looking at the trees, turned back to me. You said a year is 12 months. If a month is 28 days, then 12 of them do not equal 365. You just distribute the leftover days wherever. October has 28, November has 30, December has 31. Heck, some months might even have 32. Like that. It is a mess. That's just how it is. What do you want from me? I know what I know. If you don't like it, go draft a new solar calendar yourself. I swallowed the words that almost slipped out and shrugged. Are you saying the logic of the world is a mess? I turned at the sound of a voice behind me and met the eyes of the kid. He had that same look as when he'd asked how I knew his name. However, unlike before, the brat wasn't looking at me with irritation, but with eyes full of pure curiosity. I watched him, wondering what he was going to spout next, when a sudden realization hit me and I let out a groan. Come to think of it, if the Soul King won't answer, I can just ask the kid himself. Sigh. I guess training against a wall every day has turned my brain to stone. To think it took me this long to realize something so simple. By the way, what's your name? My name uses the characters for true, name, and call. Manako. I am called Ichibe Hyasub. Manako, the true name, those wide, bulging eyes. An obsession with names, the Soul King's lackey in the world of Bleach. I remember now. I snapped my fingers and looked down at the brat. The monk who calls the true name. Ichibe Hyasub. I remembered him looking like a cross between Bodhidharma and Chong Kohan. Come to think of it, why are the appearances of the guys I remember so damn weird? I got the order wrong. It's not that their looks are weird, it's that I remember them because they look weird. Ichai blinked, staying silent as if deep in thought, then nodded before speaking again. Regarding my question from earlier, if the laws of the world were as messy as you say, it would already be filled with chaos, a land where life cannot thrive. However, the world you speak of is, the brat was chattering away about something, but honestly, none of it entered my ears. I don't remember my past perfectly, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't a philosophy student. Don't ask me. It is what it is. If you ask me why, I can't give you an answer. But, no buts. If you want to know how the world works, don't ask me. Go study philosophy, kid. Is telling a kid with a bright future to enter the philosophy department actually a curse? Nah. In this era, there'd probably be jobs for philosophers. Like being a tutor or something. Aristotle and Pythagoras, wait, those guys were philosophers and mathematicians. Then maybe the math department. TSK, that feels wrong too. While I was thinking that, the brat who had been brooding in silence suddenly nodded. Why is he nodding? I shall do so. Whoa, why are you leaning toward philosophy? To hell with it, I don't care. Let him do what he wants. I shook my head and scratched my hair. It's his life, he'll handle it himself. Chapter 12, what is this now? Ichib Hyasub, the first Soul Reaper and, the Soul Reaper who has existed for 1,000,000 years. As soon as I realized this brat was that damn monk, I blinked blankly at the information floating in my head. 1,000,000 years. 1 million. Not 10,000, not 100,000, but 1,000,000. So, if a day is 24 hours and a year is 365 days. That's 365 million days. If I multiply that by 24 hours, 6.78 billion hours, it's a bit more merciful than the 500 million year button from the manga, but at least in that scenario you lose your memories after enduring the time. In this world there's no such thing. You have to endure 1,000,000 years raw. Wait, considering how this world works, is it actually better to keep your memories? Damn it, I hate both options. I wondered why that monk became the way he did, and now I see he had a damn good reason. Thinking just 10 years ahead feels like an eternity to me, but this isn't just 100 years, it's 1,000,000 with that heavy 10,000 character attached 10 times over. Anyone would go insane after living through a number that makes your mind reel. Just by thinking about it, but that could be me too. This is driving me crazy. I massaged my temples with a deep sigh at the budding headache. Suddenly sensing a presence beside me, I turned my head and met the Soul King's eyes. What is the matter? I just caught a glimpse of a far distant future. Why, I see. It is impressive that you have not succumbed to madness. It didn't feel like he was insulting me. It felt like he was genuinely impressed. At least, that's how it felt. Going crazy right now wouldn't exactly change anything, would it? You are correct. With those words, the Soul King turned his head toward the trees where I had carved the passing days. No, he didn't just look, he posed a question to me. When an observer perceives a distant future, should they submit to the result, or should they resist it? Look at this guy throwing Zen riddles at me just like the monk he keeps as a subordinate. I looked at the Soul King with a bitter expression and shook my head. I don't know. Like I told that brat Hyasub. Wait, did you call him Monako? Anyway, like I told the kid, if you want to know stuff like that, study philosophy. Don't ask me. Is that so? The Soul King's voice dropped, sounding a bit disappointed. I thought he was some emotionless robot, but I guess that's not entirely the case. I scratched my head at the strange atmosphere and let out another long sigh. Fine. I can at least give you my opinion. The Soul King turned back toward me, showing interest. Think for yourself. Think about what you want to do. You have plenty of time anyway. These were words for the Soul King, but they were also for myself. If I have to face the waves of 1,000,000 years without dying, this was a sort of self-hypnosis, a prayer that I would neither break nor lose my mind. And if my existence becomes meaningless? I told you. Stop asking me and think. Haven't you heard? I think, therefore I am. That phrase might not exist yet. Well, whatever, it'll come out eventually. I finished speaking and looked at the Soul King, only to be startled. The Soul King's eyes were wide with shock. For the first time, the Soul King, who had never shown much emotion, was wearing his feelings on his face. You are correct. The Soul King asked a few more things before turning his back and leaving without another word. The poor kid who had been bombarding me with questions in the Soul King's wake also followed him out. Why do I feel sorry for Achibe Hyasub, the first Soul Reaper and the future captain of Squad Zero? I can't believe he's actually going to throw himself into philosophy. I'm not sure if there's a philosophy department in this era, but things like the ego, metaphysics, utopia, just stepping into subjects that make your head explode just by hearing the names is, well, I guess since he becomes the captain of the Royal Guard later, it doesn't matter if he spends time on philosophy. He really does fine on his own. Even if I leave him be so I don't need to worry about him. I should get back to the training. I set aside for a moment. I cleared my head of useless thoughts and began my routine. Today I finished about 30 minutes earlier than usual, so I spent the remaining time practicing my power control. I decided to try something with the resources around me and cut down a suitable tree. After a short deliberation, the method I chose was to shave the wood until it was as thin as somian noodles. I thought, how hard can carving would be? But it turned out to be quite the challenge. I initially thought I could just carve away since the wood was sturdy, but the moment it got thin it would snap clean if I applied too much pressure. Creating just one required immense effort. Shaving a single piece required such meticulous control that it took several days. Still, I was happy because it felt like excellent training for fine-tuning my strength. I carved and carved until I finally produced a single sliver of wood the thickness of a noodle. It took an entire month to complete just one. Of course, since I was only doing it in the spare time after my training, it wasn't surprising, but it still took longer than expected. However, once it was finished, the sense of accomplishment was incredible. You could call it a tactile joy. It felt a bit like assembling a plastic model kit. I should make a few more. Maybe I'll try a different shape this time. Hooked on woodworking, I worked even harder to finish my training even faster. 2 more years passed like that. It now took me less than an hour to swing the 10 kilograms club 10,000 times. Instead, the time I spent carving, no, sculpting, had increased. Sculpting required even more delicate work than simple shaving, and the pride of finishing a piece was on another level, so I transitioned into art. If assembling a plastic model was step 1, I had evolved to the level of manufacturing the parts myself. Anyway, it was something like that I stood before a large tree, pondering what to create next, when I sensed the Soul King's presence. Perhaps my body had memorized it after a few visits. I could feel him approaching from a distance. He's got 2 more with him this time. Is he bringing more characters from the original series? Is he gathering the Royal Guard right now? Wait, were they all even together at this point in time? I don't know. I'll find out when I see their faces. Right? Since I'm at it, maybe I should sculpt the original characters. Is that allowed? Who cares? It's not like I'm showing them to anyone. As I sat there whittling the wood with those thoughts in mind, I heard the footsteps of 2 people treading on the grass in the distance. The Soul King floats in the air like a probe, so it's natural he makes no sound. One would be Hyasub. Who's the other one? I stopped carving and looked back to see the now familiar Soul King and Hyasub trailing behind him. And, who the hell is this guy? It was a man with white hair, and his body was trembling as he stared at the sculptures I had made. No, seriously, who is that? Chapter 13. What a freak. I suppose calling someone a son of a bitch right from our first meeting is a bit much. Of course, it wasn't an insult meant to just put him down. It was a pure exclamation born of curiosity and shock. Sin. I didn't say it out loud. I won't bother saying an apology out loud either. But honestly, he deserved to be called that. I mean it. I could understand if his hands were shaking from being deeply moved or something, but seeing him trembling like he'd taken the wrong kind of medication made it impossible for me to be polite. I knew he wasn't just some random guy since he was hanging around the Soul King. But anyone would ask, what kind of bastard is this if a stranger suddenly showed up and started having a fit? So why are you here again today? I have come to see the signpost etched into the far reaches of time. What the hell is he talking about now? Wait, a signpost? Are you here to check the time? You are correct. Oh, for Christ's sake. Your problem is that you twist your words for no reason. Just say it plainly. Is it really that hard to speak so people can understand? The Soul King didn't answer. It wasn't because he was offended. It was more like he just didn't have anything to say, so he kept his mouth shut. Sigh. Fine. He's from the old school, so I should be the one to understand. And come to think of it, maybe it's better that he speaks in that convoluted way. It's not so vague that I can't understand it. And well, he is the Soul King. I don't mean that being the Soul King gives him a pass to be difficult, but everyone has their own vibe. Speaking in riddles just happens to suit him. Imagine if the Soul King suddenly said, Yo, time is lagging so hard, I'm gonna grow old and die at this rate, no cap. Ugh, I'd hate to see that. Using schoolyard slang with that expressionless face? Just thinking about it gives me the creeps that I rubbed the goosebumps on my arms and turned back to the white-haired man, who was now literally shedding tears. I turned back to the Soul King. So what's that thing? That is a human. I blinked and wiped my face with my hand, and I wasn't asking for his species classification. Fine. I'll change the question. That white-haired guy over there, what's his name? Do you not know? You don't know this? Really? You. That was the emotion I read on the Soul King's blank face, that I stared at him with a sour expression and let out a long sigh. Sometimes it seems like you think I know everything. I don't know what I don't know. I see. So? What's the white-haired guy's name? He is Jamin Tsuneyashiro. Tsuneyashiro? Tsuneyashiro. Hold on, Tsuneyashiro? Wait, weren't they supposed to have black hair with a hint of green? Or was it? Let's try to remember. The Tsuneyashiro clan was the top of the 4 or 5 great noble families. Hair color? I wasn't too sure about that. The only thing I vaguely remembered was that the villain from the Tsuneyashiro family had black hair with green streaks. The details were fuzzy. Well, sure, unless they were doing the whole Habsburg inbreeding thing for a million years, hair color would obviously change over that much time. Bloodlines get mixed, and I scratched my head, looking at the first Tsuneyashiro, and then shook it. Right then, the Soul King beside me spoke. Do you understand? Another vague comment. Understand what? Do you understand who that person is? At least he's asking a question I can answer clearly this time. That it really is true that if someone doesn't listen, a little nagging is the best cure. That I crossed my arms with that thought. More or less. I see. The Soul King fell silent with that short reply. Seriously, he's a hard guy to talk to. Not that we were ever the type to have small talk anyway, so whatever. I stepped back a bit and looked at the unusually noisy forest from a distance. Tsuneyashiro having a meltdown, Hyasub watching him from behind, and the Soul King quietly looking at the sculpture. Thinking about it, all this noise was because of that one guy. What a feat, sigh. Back to carving. I exhaled and picked up my sharpening stone to finish the carving I was working on. It wasn't anything special, just a stone carved into the shape of a clenched fist modeled after my own hand. Why a hand? I want to make figures later. By practicing part by part like this, I planned to carve an entire figure once I was done training. Or I could just make the parts separately and assemble them. Wait, wouldn't that make it more of a plastic model than a figure? If I just make 4 parts, head, torso, arms, and legs, and assemble them, it's still a figure. I wasn't planning on getting crazy with it, like shoulder joint 1 and shoulder joint 1 to 1. As I whittled away with those thoughts, the area suddenly went quiet. They leave as silently as they arrive. Should I build some walls and a sliding door here later? After about an hour of serious concentration, the left-hand carving was finished. Of course, given the tools and my skill level, it looked more like a Buddhist statue carving than a modern figure, but I had done my best, so it was quite satisfying. Not bad. It was my first time carving something human-like. I nodded in approval and looked up, only to lock eyes with a man whose eyes were sparkling with an overwhelming amount of intensity. It was Jamin Tsuneyashiro, the white-haired man who had been freaking out an hour ago. Whoa, damn, you scared me. I apologize for frightening you. If it isn't too much trouble, could you spare a moment of your time for me? I don't have time to chat with a random dude. The Soul King wouldn't leave if I didn't answer him, so I put up with it. But this guy, Then since my hair is white, it should be fine. Looking at him now, this lunatic is completely detached from reality. Maybe his hair is white because there's nothing but blank space inside his head. I said, a dude. Hey, baldy monk, why are you touching your head too? Don't pull on it, man. You're going to lose it all anyway, so just leave it alone. I had a lot to say, but I knew it would just make me more tired, so I just sighed. Looking at him, this guy is cut from the same cloth as the Soul King. Sigh, fine. Whatever. What do you want to talk about? No. I am not seeking conversation. I wish to learn the techniques you possess. Ha. Seriously, what is with this guy? I mean it. I looked at the Soul King in surprise. He glanced at me for a moment and then turned his head away as if he couldn't care less. So I'm supposed to handle this myself? I glared at the back of the Soul King's head, but realizing that wouldn't change anything, I let out another deep breath. Sigh, fine. Do whatever you want. But I've never taught anyone before, so you're on your own. Got it? Haha. Yes. I may not look like much, but I am very confident when it comes to learning new things. I scratched my head and turned to say something to the Soul King, but he was already gone. Where'd he go? If you mean the Soul King, he vanished with Monako a moment ago. My, he truly is a man whose ways are unknown. Ha ha ha. That bastard just dumped his trash on me and dipped, damn it. Next time he comes, I'm definitely hitting him. You. Well, since I said I'd do it, I'll do it right. Follow me. Let's find some stones for carving first. Yes, sir. Well, it's not like I'm short on time. Teaching someone might not be so bad. Ha ha ha. Just the thought of acquiring new knowledge is making my skin tingle. Seriously, I've met some weirdos, but this guy takes the cake. Chapter 14. He's one weird bastard. My lifestyle used to be centered entirely around myself. I would wake up the moment sunlight filtered through the leaves, stretch my body, and start swinging my club. After finishing the training that has now become a habit, I would drag a log over, split it into 8 pieces, and use those chunks to carve various sculptures that I'd carve away until the sun went down, and when sleepiness finally crept in, I'd turn in on a wooden bed I'd carved and assembled myself. For the record, there are no blankets. I once tried to act crazy and carve a blanket out of wood, but I almost got crushed to death. Of course, that's a figure of speech. I wasn't literally going to die. After all the training I've done, if I died from being crushed by a mere wooden plank, I'd be too embarrassed to stay dead. Anyway, that cycle of life, which had rotated without change for years, was shattered the moment the keyword disciple entered the picture. Sigh. It's not that I particularly hate it. Well, I do hate it, maybe a little, but I've come to think this change isn't entirely bad. My body might still reject it instinctively, but that's a burden the guy who insisted on being my disciple has to bear. Who would be happy about their peaceful routine of several years getting pulverized? The long and short of it is this: that in the end, I was stuck cleaning up the massive mess, the hot shit dropped off by the Soul King and that baldy monk, a man named Tsunishiro, and this Tsunishiro guy is a hell of a lot more annoying than I anticipated. Why annoying? Well, master. Because he's a man with a scholarly passion equivalent to the temperature of the Earth's core, peppering me with questions at least hundreds, and sometimes tens of thousands, of times a day, excluding the time we spend training, even today. How many has it been? This one that I stopped counting after 100, so I don't even remember. Anyway, at the sound of Tsunishiro calling me, I stopped carving the wood and looked back. What? What is it now? What were you envisioning when you created this sculpture? I looked at Tsunishiro with a disgruntled face, then lowered my gaze to check the carving he was holding. That. What was that again? No, I definitely know what it is, but the name suddenly slipped my mind. What was it? Could it be, master, that even you do not know? Ah, shut it. I'm about to remember. Yes, sir. I closed my eyes, scowled deeply, and tapped my forehead with my fingertip. I remember now. A pose that makes you look like a good fighter. Oh. So if one takes a stance like this, one appears proficient in combat. Like this? Like this? Should I spread my legs a bit wider? As he spoke, Tsunishiro spread his legs slightly and rested both hands on his knees. He kept asking while tweaking his posture here and there, but no matter how he shifted, from my perspective, he just looked like an idiot. No, you just look like a total dumbass. I just made that for fun, so don't take it seriously. I see. You mean I should not try to find meaning in everything? This has been a great lesson. No, when did I ever say that? Before I could even speak, Tsunishiro bowed with a smile and left the spot. He's a truly exhausting personality, I tell you. Phew. The tragedy is that he'll be back in 10 or 20 minutes. Seriously, next time the Soul King and the Baldy Monk come back, I'm definitely punching them. Making that internal vow, I continued carving the wooden figure into a human shape. Master. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's been 5 years since I took in the shit the Soul King and the monk dropped off, and a lot has happened during that time. Enough has happened that even Zoro would tilt his head and go, whoa, even I think this is a bit much. First of all, I have a house. You might be surprised and ask if I didn't have a house until now, but the truth is, I don't know how to build one. Think it's easy to just stack logs and call it a day? Do you think I didn't try that? I succeeded in making something shaped like a house, but the weight distribution must have been all wrong because it collapsed in a few days. Thanks to that, I had the experience of being buried alive under wood while I was sleeping. Damn it, but this self-proclaimed disciple of mine, I just drew a rough sketch on the ground, and he went, I see. And before I knew it, he had mastered architecture and asked me to build it exactly like the drawing. And I'm still using that house now. That was impressive enough, but when I taught him a few other things, he understood them immediately and followed suit. No, he went even further and applied them. I, who suddenly reincarnated into the world of Bleach, was despondent over 1,000,000 years of isolation, but when I took in a new disciple, he turned out to be a total genius, and now my life is on easy mode. That sounds like a title that would easily rank in the top 20 of a longest light novel title World Cup. But the funny thing is, what I just said wasn't made up, it's based on a true story. Reincarnated in the Bleach world, correct. 1,000,000 years, correct, actually it was even longer. Despondent, half correct. Took in a new disciple, also correct. Disciple is a genius, correct. Easy mode, okay, let's call that an exaggeration. Taking in one disciple rarely flips your whole life upside down. Master, I have created iron using the metallurgy techniques you taught me. But we just skipped the Paleolithic, Neolithic, and Bronze Ages and jumped straight into the Iron Age. I think I'm allowed to use the easy mode tag for that. Actually, forget easy mode. This guy is literally appending the era. Sigh. I don't even have the energy to be surprised anymore. Did I let out a deep breath and nodded? Yeah. Impressive. Haha. It is all thanks to your teachings on metallurgy, master. He says I taught him metallurgy, but I don't know a damn thing about metallurgy. Calling it teaching is a stretch. I just told him the crumbs of knowledge I possessed at IT was basically, there's this thing called iron, it has such and such properties and is usually found in certain places. When it rusts it looks red, which is why some rocks look red. It has to be insanely hot to melt. It was just some guy who knows nothing about the M in metallurgy pretending to be an X. Pert with scavenged trivia. And yet he actually did it. This guy actually went out and produced real iron. He doesn't just learn 10 things when taught one, he learns them even when I haven't taught him anything that he once told me he was confident in his ability to learn, but to be honest, it's starting to get a bit scary. How is it even learning if you figure it out before being taught? That's not a talent for learning, that's a talent for enlightenment. Genius, when taken to an extreme, is terrifying. Here. Please take a look, master. Well, I took the metal, which might be the very first piece of iron in this world, from Tsunishiro's hand and examined it from all sides, from weight to texture, hardness to strength. It felt a little soft, but from my perspective even steel would feel soft, so I let that slide. I kneaded it with my hands into the shape of a rod and tapped it against a tree. Ting ting, the familiar sound of iron rang out. It wasn't some imitation, it was real iron. It's iron, all right. Right? Is it not incredible? With this iron you taught me about, we shall be able to do so much more. It possesses a sturdiness incomparable to wood or stone. If refined correctly, we can create things much sharper than any stone axe. Yeah, I suppose so. Then, shall we create something with this immediately? What should it be? Let's just make whatever we need and use it. There's no need to stick to just one thing. Indeed. I understand. Every time you say that, you scare me, you little brat. Last time I told him a bit about constellations, he suddenly yelled, I understand, and produced a celestial map within days. It nearly gave me a heart attack, not like telling him would do any good. He wouldn't listen. I sighed inwardly and looked at Tsunishirow while tapping my shoulder with the iron rod I'd molded. Meeting my gaze, Tsunishirow blinked with eyes as innocent as a deer caught in high-beam headlights on a midnight highway. Looking at him now, it's almost creepy. No, that's not it, Tsunishirow. Tsunishirow's eyes widened when I called him by his surname. Since I hadn't called him by his family name once the entire time we'd lived together, he looked slightly surprised before quickly kneeling before me with a solemn expression. Yes, there's something I've been wondering about but haven't asked. His extreme sincerity made me feel serious in turn, and I scratched my head. Life is easier when you keep a few screws loose in your head. Sigh. Why are you so obsessed with learning? I had to ask. Haha. At my question, Tsunishiro laughed. Chapter 15, Tsunishiro Obsession. Was that how my master viewed my desperate struggle? To my flawless master, it was only natural that my unsightly writhing appeared as nothing more than an obsession. But forgive me, master, is it not the proper path for the ignorant to question the natural order? I raised my head to look at him. My master was looking down at me with an expression that suggested he truly could not understand. However, I did not feel that same distance from him as I did from the Soul King. He was not asking as a flawless divine being, but as one man to another. Because of that, I felt at ease enough to open my mouth. To engage in this dialogue. Why did you think I was obsessed with learning? I asked you first. A question for a question. It was a rudeness, returning a query with another query, but I believed my master, having spent so much time with me, would surely forgive it. With that thought, I lowered my gaze slightly, and a sigh reached my ears. It was a sign that he accepted my behavior, so I raised my head once more. My master looked disgruntled, but he did not reprimand me. He scratched his head in silence for a moment before crossing his arms. Wanting to know what you don't know is natural. But in your case, it's excessive. Even with the same object, you look at it over and over, unable to rest until you know its every detail inside and out. If that's not an obsession, what is? I simply wish to know what I did not know. I was sincere. I simply want to know everything in this world. I want to know the structure of this world. I want to know the truth of life and death. You may not understand, master, but to me this is more important than anything else. I gave a bitter smile and bowed my head at his words. You want to know everything in the world? Like the truth or whatever? I couldn't help but stop smiling at his reply. His voice was indifferent, as if it were nothing at all, yet he had accurately pierced my inner intent. It was a bit startling, even a bit frightening, but for my master this was only natural. For a flawless existence, grasping the intent of a flawed being must be trivial. Therefore I did not deny it. Denial would be meaningless. Yes. You see right through me. Sigh. My master exhaled with a complicated expression, closing his eyes and tapping his forearm with his index finger. It was a gesture he made whenever he was pondering what to say to me. Immediately, I closed my eyes and opened my ears. I stepped closer to him, determined not to miss a single word. After a long silence, my master exhaled once more and finally spoke. Why? Why? That single word left me speechless. If you ask me why, I pondered for a moment before speaking. There was no point in hiding my true feelings from him. Because I am afraid. Of what you don't know? Yes. I seek to learn because I am afraid. Once I learn the unknown, master it, and grasp its essence, it is no longer frightening. Ignorance is terrifying. The unknown is a source of dread, like the shadow beneath a bed, or the forest when night falls. It is scary because you do not know what is there. It is scary because you do not know what it is, but if I learn it and learn it again until I make it my own, it is no longer scary. Fear is something that can be overcome through learning. That is why I struggle to learn and master even the smallest detail. To my master, that must have looked like an obsession. I learn and master things so that I do not die, to escape from fear. I'd say you've done enough already. I do not believe there is such a thing as enough in learning. I dared to contradict my master and shook my head. My belief that learning is never complete remained unshaken, above all, because I have yet to learn of the Soul King. The Soul King, that thing, is incomprehensible, its principles of action, its thoughts, the exact nature and extent of its power. I know nothing of them. The fragments of the Soul King I have been able to infer through my learning and experience are these. The Soul King rejects hollows and performs eradication on everyone he sees. And those actions of the Soul King are, bit by bit, devouring this world. Does that not mean the Soul King's very existence is a threat to the RLD? Why does he do it? He is a part of this world himself. So why does he not return the hollows to Rashur? Why does he choose eradication, turning them into nothingness? Why does he burn himself away? Why has he chosen extinction over permanence? Why has he divided life and death, inviting death by his own hand? That man is a madman. He looks sane on the outside, but inside he is an aberration, festering and reeking of rot. He is no different from a self-destructing mud doll, one who continues to act even while knowing the eradication of hollows is a form of self-cannibalism. The real problem is that what he is tearing down isn't just himself, but the entire world. It is not for some grand reason, like saving the world or for the greater good, that I am simply afraid that one day, I might become a hollow and be eradicated by the Soul King's hand, vanishing without even a trace that I ever existed. If not that, then I fear the destruction of the world that will surely come in the future. That I am a coward who cannot bear the thought of my existence disappearing. I still have many fears. There is too much I do not know. Therefore, yes, as you said, Master, I intend to remain obsessed with learning. And what is it you want to know by doing that? The truth of this world. Everything about the Soul King. That is why I seek to learn from you, Master. Because you are the one who can tell me what I desire. Because you, my flawless master, surely know a way to stop, to kill the Soul King. After pouring out my heart, I steadied my trembling breath and met my master's eyes. His half-closed, languid eyes seemed at a glance to contain only laziness and apathy. To me, however, they looked like the eyes of one who had carved out enlightenment. My master always gave me an answer after making that face, so I waited quietly for his response. You're gonna end up shaking in fear until you die an early death. Pardon? Startled, I blinked and asked him to repeat himself. Why do you say I will die? Did I do something wrong? I looked at him, swallowing dryly in my fear, but my master shook his head. Did you say there's no such thing as enough in learning? That's not quite it. It's not that learning is never enough, it's that it has no end. Let's see. Master rose slowly, took a wooden sculpture of an arm he had been working on and placed it before me. He then began carving it again, turning it into something completely different. It was no longer human. Do you know what this is? I do not know. It's a machine. A mechanical hand. In the distant future, these will be made of iron. No, was it tungsten? Anyway. Now, wait a second. He then snapped the wrist off the sculpture and began gouging out the inside of the forearm. In the end, what had been a human arm was now only one on the outside. The inside was a hollow cylinder. Then do you know what this is? I do not know. This is a prosthetic arm modified into a cannon. If you put gunpowder and slugs in here and fire it, it blows the opponent to bits. It's a very romantic thing. Well, not like you can make one now anyway. Master tossed the sculpture behind his back and sighed while looking at me. If you want to know everything, you'd better start by stopping this world from changing anymore. Because even while we're talking right now, the world is changing second by second. And what does just learning and mastering things change? If you just know things, everything stays the same. If you're afraid of change, you have to change things yourself. But I am not capable enough alone. To change the world, how could a small and insignificant being like me? If it's hard to do alone, then just do it with other people. At those words, a jolt ran through my entire body. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck my mind. I understand. I understand now. Why do you have to say it twice? It's creepy. Thank you. Truly, truly. Looking at me with a dubious expression, my master scratched his head and then let out an ah. So this is why the Soul King dies. Startled, I looked at him, but my master merely glanced my way and waved his hand dismissively. It's nothing. Just talking to myself. If you don't have anything else to ask, you can go. I need to do some thinking too. He turned his back, and after staring at him for a moment, I bowed deeply and returned to where I belonged. Just how much does he know? A vague sense of dread quietly reared its head. Chapter 16. Stop trying to understand the mess left behind by the Soul King and that damn monk. Actually, my disciple is way too terrifying. Sigh. Through the conversation we had a few days ago, I finally remembered, or rather was forced to remember, exactly what kind of man Tsuneyashiro was. He is the ultimate lunatic who, driven by his own fear, seals away and dismembers the very source of that fear into pieces. What do I mean by that? My disciple is a world-class psychopathic serial killer who, simply because he didn't want to die, will eventually seal the Soul King, clip his nails, hack off his limbs, and tear out his brain and heart just to throw them away. He's the kind of high-tier nutcase who would rank first in any contest of depravity. The man who will eventually stuff the Soul King's corpse-like husk into the royal palace to use as a wedge to keep the worlds together. Did Tio think such a terrifying man was treating me as his master? If I had turned him away out of annoyance when we first met, he probably would have held a grudge and stabbed me in the back by now. Ugh, living for 1,000,000 years sounds daunting, but it's 1,000 times better than being murdered, stuffed, and having my limbs lopped off. When I think about it, the lore mentioned that the Soul King remained alive even in that state. That means he had to watch his own limbs being severed while he was still conscious. I wouldn't be able to stomach that even if I were dead. I have no desire to become a Soul King who has to endure such a fate. I started this training in the first place because I didn't want to die. I have no intention of getting taxidermied because I backed the wrong horse. I'm getting the chills. I wonder if the mother of Kim Hitler in that one novel I read felt like this. Actually, she said she was proud of him, so she's probably a lot different from me. Until just recently, I only thought of him as a talkative, inquisitive, and annoying brat. I remembered far too late. The moment I heard his name and thought it sounded like a villain from the original series, I should have run away without looking back. Or at least thrown out a decent excuse and gone into hiding, but I didn't. It's too late for regrets now. If I was going to do something, I should have done it a long time ago. The time has passed. It has passed by a long shot. So what can I do? I have to accept it. Of course, accepting it doesn't mean I'll just acknowledge that maniac as my disciple and leave him be. If I leave him to his own devices, he'll eventually stretch his demonic claws toward me. I can't just sit still until it's too late to act, but that doesn't mean I'm going to kill Tsuneyashiro either. If I were to kill him here and now, the world would come to an end. According to Tsuneyashiro, if the Soul King remains alive, his habit of eradicating hollows will lead to the total annihilation of the erasure that maintains the world's structure, causing everything to collapse. If I kill Tsuneyashiro, the Soul King lives. If the Soul King lives, the three worlds will never be divided. If that happens, the original story is completely shattered. The world will simply continue in this state forever, waiting for the inevitable destruction to arrive. Now that I think about it, it was the Soul King who maintained the three worlds too. In the end, the only things I can do are either side with Tsuneyashiro to backstab the Soul King, or secretly run away and hide before things go south. Siding with the future Soul Reapers is one option. But I want to avoid getting entangled in unnecessary business like betraying the Soul King and then being bound by duty. Look at that monk. After he betrayed the Soul King, he ended up stuck in the royal palace, unable to leave unless he had to have a one-on-one meeting with Yawatch or the Siriidii was being pulverized. I don't want to live like that. They say with great power comes great responsibility. Then I just won't get great power. I just won't do anything that requires responsibility, right? More than anything, I want to be free. I just want to live a life of leisure. So, if things look bad, I'm bailing without a second thought. Good. That's enough of that. If I keep agonizing over the same topic, my sharp-witted disciple might notice something strange and start getting suspicious. Let's stop thinking about it. I nodded to myself, grabbed an axe, and chopped down a tree with a satisfying swing. I cut it into manageable chunks and brought them back. Then I retrieved the iron chisels and carving knives Tsuneyashiro had made for me last time. Why am I suddenly wood carving in the middle of a serious existential crisis? Because there's nothing better than carving to clear one's mind. Now what should I make with this? I pondered for a moment, but I had actually already decided. Yes, it was time for an action figure. Unlike before, when I had to crudely scrape wood with broken stones and brute force, the arrival of chisels and carving knives allowed for much finer detail. I could finally create the figures I had wanted to make for so long. And not just by making parts and gluing them together, I was going to carve a single-piece figure out of a solid block of wood. The problem was deciding who to carve. What is safe to make right now? First off, carving the original protagonist's group or supporting characters was a big no-no. Who knows what kind of butterfly effect that would cause? In that case, there was only one safe, middle-of-the-road choice. Scrape, scrape. Instead of blocking out the whole shape first, I began carving slowly from the front. I had the form of the face, body, limbs, and even the clothes visualized in my head, so I simply carved them into existence. Unlike a 3D printer that builds things up, it felt like a reverse 3D printer that carved things away. Because of that, it initially looked like one of those 4 Heavenly King statues engraved into a wall, but if I kept at it, an action figure would be finished. Of course. I had to deal with my disciple first. Sensing a presence approaching, I put down the carving knife and looked toward the source. Sure enough, before long, Tsuneyashiro emerged from the bushes with a grim expression. What's with him now? Is he already scheming to backstab the Soul King or me? No, surely not, right? I shook my head and looked down at the figure in my hands to steady my mind. The half-finished figure looked as if half of its body was still fused into the wood. Looking at it this way, it actually looked a bit like it was taxidermied against a wall. Master. Letting out a deep internal sigh, I turned my head toward my disciple, only to see him staring at me with a look of pure shock. No, he wasn't looking at me, he was staring at the carving in my hand. That. Could it be? Oh, this? It's the Soul King. Carved it well, didn't I? Perhaps because I had emptied my mind while carving, it was only after the words left my mouth that I realized exactly who I was showing a Soul King figure to. I screamed internally. However, even seeing the half-finished Soul King, the disciple showed no reaction. That made it even scarier. An improvised explosive device with no visible timer is much more terrifying than a time bomb where you can see the seconds ticking down, isn't it? That was exactly how it felt. The lack of reaction was bone-chilling. Would it be okay if I just quietly moved on? With that thought, I pulled the figure back and slowly began carving with the knife again. That it wasn't just my imagination. A gaze so intense it practically stung my back was fixed right on me. I felt like I was going to lose my mind from the pressure. Why was I so intimidated by a mere disciple? How am I supposed to handle a lunatic who seals the Soul King and hacks off his limbs? You're not supposed to engage with crazy people. While I was carving the figure with trembling hands, I failed to control my strength and sliced the carving knife clean through the figure's arm. I looked at the figure, where the arm had become AR/M, and then slowly turned my head toward my disciple. My disciple, who had been staring at the severed arm of the Soul King figure, finally gave a slow nod. I understand. Understand what, you lunatic? Stop finding meaning in every little thing and understanding it. I wanted to scream that at him, but I was afraid he'd say, "Forgot my true nature, didn't you? Hup, and seal me away too." I quietly set down the Soul King figure and left the area. I have no intention of becoming Soul King number 2. I wasn't running away because I was scared. I was simply putting into practice the lesson that one should never bet their life on a gamble. Chapter 17. The Dark One. 2 more years have slipped by since then. It has now been 5 years since the seed planted by the Soul King and that baldy monk took root in my land of peace and quiet. 5 years is enough time for a sapling to grow into a sturdy tree. It's enough time for a flower to bloom brilliantly, wither away, and return to the dirt. The thing about those two is that once a tree becomes a sapling, it's usually hauled off to be sold, and once a flower blooms, it scatters its seeds far and wide as it dies. By doing so, they leave their original home and depart for distant places. So, why is it that my dear disciple hasn't left my side even after 5 years? Is he still in some kind of mandatory education phase? Or has the seed simply not germinated yet? Or maybe this seed isn't that kind of seed. God damn it. I stole a brief sideways glance at Tsuneyashiro, who was sitting right next to me carving wood, before turning my eyes back to my own sculpture. Having spent nearly 10 years carving, I'd reached a level where there wasn't much I couldn't make. Of course, despite reaching a level where I could make almost anything, I still couldn't craft something that would finally drive this disciple of mine away. If it doesn't exist in this world, even I can't build it. Suppressing the sigh that threatened to burst out, I finally spoke. Do you still have questions left? It was you who told me that there is no end to learning, master. Drop dead past me. Why did I have to say something like that and turn this kid into this? Sigh. Seriously, if I hadn't opened my mouth back then, I'd be living a leisurely life of solitude right now. I shut my mouth for a moment and began sketching out what-if scenarios in my mind. You're abandoning me? Tsuneyashiro will remember this. You won't teach me? I'm so scared. At this rate you'll die. Why are you taking the Soul King side? I trusted you, master. Die. Wow, holy shit. There isn't a single path that ends well. I guess what I did back then was the best move after all. Good job, pass me. As I sat there half-dazed, letting my brain rot with nonsense, I felt a familiar presence for the first time in a long while and lifted my head. Finally, he's here. My savior, a presence like a smartphone screen at maximum brightness in the dead of night, like salt water entering a scraped knee after a fall at the beach. I stared straight in the direction of the presence, and the moment that familiar, pale, washed-out face entered my sight. Good to see you, Soul King. I shouted and slammed my sculpture and carving knife down on the ground, launching myself forward. Just one hit. Really, no more and no less, just let me hit you once. The Soul King blinked as he looked toward me belatedly, but my fist was already lunging toward his abdomen. However, as always, my fist was halted by an invisible wall. As I pushed a bit harder, feeling as if it might shatter, I saw the empty air begin to splinter, *crack star. But I knew if I swung with my full strength, this would turn into a life-or-death duel with no ranks held back, so I deliberately pulled my power and stopped at a light tap. Good to see you, Soul King. Boom! A roar that sounded like the heavens being split in two shook the forest, but the Soul King didn't even flinch. Only when the sound caught up to my movements a moment later did the Soul King finally look at me. Why do you attack? Resentment for dumping your chores on me and running away. I understand. Ah, that's the phrase I've hated hearing most lately. Come to think of it, this guy was the original I understand guy. Did I let out a deep sigh and scratched my head? No point in thinking about it, it only makes my head hurt. So, what kind of shit is our great Soul King here to scatter this time? I do not engage in bowel movements. That's not what I meant. As I said that, I tapped the Soul King's shoulder with the back of my hand. Since I didn't intend it as an attack, that invisible wall from earlier didn't manifest. I felt something approaching rapidly. When I turned my head toward the sensation, I saw a pitch-black shadow leaping between the trees. Looking closer, it was a person. A dark-skinned fellow? No, a girl? Ah, her hair is a bit short, but she's definitely a girl. Regardless, this dark figure charged straight at me. You! What insolence before the Soul King! What the hell is this now? She came out so boldly with a flying kick that my true thoughts slipped out of my mouth. I didn't want to counter too hard and risk breaking something on her, so I simply shifted my body to the side. But the Dark One didn't stop there, using the tree on the opposite side as a foothold to spring back at me again. And when I say Dark One, it's not racial, her skin is literally a deep dark brown. Wait a minute, if we're talking about the most famous dark-skinned characters in the world of Bleach, Shohoin? WH-. How do you know my name? Bastard. You must be a sorcerer. The Shohoin girl seemed startled that I knew her name and stammered for a second, but the leg she had extended to kick me didn't waver for a moment. As expected of an ancestor of Master Yoruichi, the one responsible for my childhood curiosity with those bursting thighs, her martial arts were top tier. Slow. I shifted my body slightly to dodge the kick again, and the Shohoin girl's eyes went wide. How did you evade my fastest strike? You. I won't let you get away with this. Fastest strike, huh? It was fast, sure, fast enough to impress most people, but to me it was just a speed I could watch and avoid casually. Speed aside, her attacks were so straightforward that once I saw her initial leap, I could dodge them without even looking. Soul King. Her name is Shohoin, right? You are correct. I told you before. Fix that damn way of talking. Scoundrel. How dare you use such language toward the Soul King? A kick aimed at the back of my head this time? Predictable. I tilted my body to evade the obvious trajectory and looked down at the brazen brat passing in front of me that I'd moved out of the way ages ago, but the brat was still staring at the spot where I used to be. I let out a deep sigh and scratched my head. You need some sleep. Ah, by the time these words reach her, she'll probably already be unconscious. Well, not like I care. I reached out, gripped the brat's face in my hand, and gave her a light shake. The moment I let go, the brat's eyes rolled back and she passed out instantly, as if falling into a deep slumber. Of course, because she went unconscious midair, she couldn't stick the landing and tumbled across the ground, rolling until she slammed into a tree on the far side. Ouch, that looks like it hurt. She was just a kid in terms of size, and I felt a twinge of guilt wondering if I'd gone too far. But then I remembered she was the one who attacked first. I didn't throw the first punch, she jumped in without measuring the gap between us, so it's her own fault. You have become much faster than before. The Soul King drifted closer as he spoke. I just shrugged my shoulders. I train every day. I see. I see, is that so, is it, indeed? Hearing that infuriating manner of speech again, I almost instinctively threw a punch. The moment I raised my fist, I felt that strange barrier manifest. He'd already reconstructed the invisible wall I'd cracked earlier. I gave up on hitting him. Fine, I'll be the bigger man. It's not like we're fight. ING to the death. By the way, it feels like every time you visit, you bring an extra piece of baggage? I have brought no luggage. That's exactly the problem. Why doesn't this guy realize that's a bigger issue? This bastard. A king does not understand the hearts of people. Frustrated, I sighed and quoted the famous line of a certain red-haired blacksmith before shaking my head. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my disciple staring intently at me from behind a tree before nodding and backing away. I have understood. He didn't say a word as he hid himself, yet I felt like I could actually hear him saying that. Heavens, have I gone and done it again? Chapter 18, The Bullshit Philosopher and a Truly Great Man. According to the Soul King, meeting the Shohoin was merely a coincidence, and it seems the Baldy monk, not the king himself, was the one who bestowed the name. His way of speaking is so damn convoluted that I had to untangle his words like a pair of earphones fresh out of a pocket to interpret that much. So you're saying that tomboy brat almost died to a hollow, you helped her out, and now she's following you around? I simply eradicated the hollow. Right. Well, I suppose you did. He only dealt with the hollow because it happened to be there. He had no particular intention of saving the Shohoin woman. That's likely what he meant, but this guy lacks words. He's incredibly, frustratingly short on words. Seriously, if you aren't going to fix the way you talk, just don't speak for the rest of your life. I let out a deep sigh and shook my head. Come to think of it, once he's sealed, he really won't be able to speak for the rest of his life. I smacked my lips and scratched my head. It felt strange, like I had just laid a curse on someone who was already destined to die. I'm just glad Tsunoyashiro didn't hear that. I glanced toward the tree where Tsunoyashiro was, and our eyes met. Sometimes I can't tell if that bastard is a disciple or a stalker. No, it's my fault for letting my mouth run wild. This mouth of mine is my own worst enemy. As I exhaled a long sigh, the Soul King, who had been standing beside me, approached. I watched him, wondering what he wanted to say, when an unexpected question flew my way. Have you also seen my end? Didn't you ask me that the first time we met? It is similar yet different. Was it? So much time has passed that my memory is getting fuzzy. When he says the end, which part is he referring to? When he's stabbed in the back and sealed? Or when he's sliced in two by the protagonist? Or perhaps when he's absorbed by Yawatch and turns into something like a bird of the apocalypse? The timing might vary, but in terms of what I've seen, I suppose I've seen it all. I nodded a half-beat late, and the Soul King gave a small nod of his own, as if to say, as I thought, does that end remain unchanged? It seemed like a trivial question, but after a moment's reflection I realized it was a heavy inquiry based on determinism, the idea that the future of humanity follows a predetermined conclusion. The simple question the Soul King tossed at me forced me into a deep state of contemplation. Is the end the Soul King speaks of the conclusion of fate, or is it the end determined by free will? If this place truly is the world inside the manga drawn by Kubo, then determinism would be correct. However, by the intervention of a completely different existence, me, this world has become something else entirely. If the above premise is false, it means this world still runs on determinism. And if that's the case, it means that I, as the only being possessing free will, hold the power to change the future of the world. I could derail fate right now by persuading or killing Tsunoyashiro. As a result, the world would face a completely different conclusion rather than the one ordained. So how should I answer the Soul King? Fate or free will? I blinked slowly as philosophical self-arguments filled my head for a split second. Recalling what I was just thinking made a sigh leak out automatically. Damn, have I been under too much stress lately? Philosophy. Seriously, give me a break. It's not like I'm reading a book summarizing the works of Nietzsche, Socrates, Confucius, or Descartes and going, I see. There is absolutely no point in a dimwit like me racking my brain over difficult academic subjects like philosophy. No matter how much I ponder and reflect, the only thing that'll come out is a pile of bullshit philosophy. I ran my fingers through my hair to cool down my head, which had grown hot from a few seconds of thinking. A cool breeze passed through my hair, siphoning away the heat. Sigh. Look at how my head heated up just from thinking a little bit. They say if your head gets too hot, your hair falls out. I'm going to end up with premature balding at this rate. Wait, is the reason the baldy monk lost all his hair because I told him to study philosophy? I felt a momentary twinge of guilt, but I brushed it off. Well, whatever. If you're going to be a monk, you have to shave it all anyway. It's probably better to be naturally bald so you don't have to use a razor every morning. Let's scrap the philosophy and think like myself. What kind of end is the Soul King talking about? For now, the most immediate end would be the future where kills you will not change. I cannot hear the name. However, I understand the meaning of your words. The Soul King nodded again. Come to think of it, he wouldn't even nod in the past, but now he's actually nodding. Is he a being that can think, agonize, and grow in his own way? Then another question arises. Why does the Soul King remain so indifferent even though he knows of his own death? No, why doesn't he resist? With the Soul King's power, he could easily kill Tsunoyashiro or, conversely, tear him limb from limb. I can tell what thou art thinking. I have already accepted my end. for I have judged that such is the reason for my existence. Reason for existence? Wasn't your reason for existing to eradicate the hollows? That is merely the process leading to the end. Furthermore, if my end becomes a new beginning, is it not only right that it be allowed to come to pass? The Soul King's expression as he spoke was expressionless as always, but to my eyes it somehow looked like he was smiling. The moment I saw that expression, it felt as if I'd been struck in the back of the head with a hammer, leaving my brain ringing. I had always thought of him as a machine-like bastard devoid of emotion, a kind of natural phenomenon like water flowing downward or the wind blowing. But that expression, no matter who looked at it, was clearly the face of someone who was truly living in this moment. Of course, the idea that he looked like he was smiling might just be my imagination. Yeah, a big shock can do that to you. But, furthermore, if my end becomes a new beginning, is it not only right that it be allowed to come to pass? Could those words really come from the mouth of a phenomenon-like being that feels nothing? No. Absolutely not. There's no way. The moment I saw the Soul King's face, I realized it. No, perhaps I had known it all along. I had simply been feigning ignorance to suppress this guilt. Heh! It felt as though scales were falling from my eyes. And in that moment, the triangle named guilt began rolling around in my heart, stabbing me incessantly. It rampaged wildly, piercing me deep enough to bleed, turning my mind into a mess. That bastard Tsuneyashiro, what about a guy like this is so scary that he feels he has to kill him? Oh. Wait, was it because of that? Ha! Had he even considered that for them? Purposefully not showing emotion, purposefully using an irritating way of speaking, purposefully not explaining things, and purposefully hiding his own truth so that Tsuneyashiro would fear him so that, in the end, he would make them kill him. You've had your mind made up for a long time, haven't you? It is so. And that way of talking is so people don't grow attached to you. Think as thou wilt. What a truly incredible bastard, no, a truly incredible man you are. The Soul King gave no reply to those words, but somehow, just as the Soul King had said earlier, I felt like I understood his meaning even without him speaking. That I just had that feeling. Chapter 19. 3 To come the Soul King. He truly is an incredible man. To live knowing your death is inevitable, yet willingly offering your life for the sake of other beings. The moment I heard those words, it felt as though I'd been struck over the head with a sledgehammer. That I wondered how anyone could live like that. The conversation we shared that day became the turning point that fundamentally shifted my perception of him. When I first saw him, he was just a ruthless hollow killer man. When I realized he was oddly airhead, he became the young king. But through our most recent conversation, he finally became, in my eyes, the Soul King. In my mind, his image transformed from a mere machine that slaughtered hollows into a king in the truest sense of the word. But isn't it dangerous if Tsuneyashiro hears this? Of course, that doesn't mean my attitude is going to change. Unlike the Soul King, who seems to have been born from the seeds of gods and nobles, I am a lowly bastard by nature. I don't know the first thing about formalities or etiquette. Scratching my head, I glanced toward the tree where my disciple was hiding. He wasn't even trying to conceal himself anymore. Our eyes met as he stared openly in this direction. That I looked at my disciple with a sour expression for a moment before turning back to the Soul King. He shook his head slowly. He would not have heard our prior conversation. Nor can anyone else hear what we speak of now save for you and I. Is this some kind of special barrier? Was it Tendikura? I've seen techniques like voice transmission in martial arts novels. Was it something like that? Can you understand the cries of a beast? As if. Then do you believe a beast can truly comprehend the meaning of a human's words? Probably not. If you keep teaching them, they might follow orders, but that's just a body habituated through repetitive learning. You can't really say they understand. Wait, don't tell me. Are you saying they can't understand what we're saying right now? Correct. But they seem to understand us just fine normally. That is because, subconsciously, I lower the level of my speech to a degree the listener can comprehend. Oh, if anyone else had said that, I would have walked away thinking I'd met a total lunatic. But the person in front of me is who he is, and this is the world of Bleach, where a self-proclaimed Mothman who transcends hollows and soul reapers actually exists. I had no choice but to believe him, and well, he's the expert. Who am I to argue? Experts are experts for a reason. So what now? I've learned why the Soul King intends to die, and I've realized he's a man dreaming of a global reformation through a level of self-sacrifice I could never even fathom. But what can I do about it? No, what should I do, to be honest, while I thought, wow, what an amazing person. It's a shame for someone like this to die. I didn't have any thoughts beyond that, sure. I felt a small prick of guilt knowing he's going to die and just letting it happen, but I didn't feel like trying to persuade the Soul King or Tsunishiro otherwise. Because that's the only way I get to live, and I don't have the confidence to conceive of a better world than one where the three worlds are divided and the Soul King serves as the linchpin. TCH. If I were some omnipotent god who created the heavens and earth in 6 days and said I should rest on the 7th, that would be one thing. But I'm not, even if I tried to convince everyone that the Soul King is a great man and we should let him live because it's a waste to kill him. Then what do we do if we don't kill him? The world will perish if he stays alive. I dunno. If I answer like that, it's a total dead end. Besides, if I run my mouth like that and things go sideways, I might end up becoming Soul King Mark II.No. Wait. In that timeline, since the Soul King wouldn't have died yet, I guess I'd be linchpin Mark I. Persuading the Soul King is also difficult. No, it's not just difficult, it's impossible. Sir, please stop killing hollows. The hollows are devouring other hollows and souls alike, and the world is ending. What shall I do? I dunno. It's the same result that I end the end. It's a choice between the worst and the lesser evil that I end that case. Shouldn't I at least choose the lesser evil over the worst? I have to survive first. And since the man himself is volunteering for the sacrifice, who am I to stop him? Right. Well, I guess I've got nothing left to say. TCH.as I smacked my lips and scratched my head. The Soul King gazed into the distance and murmured softly. I have no need for guideposts on the path I have chosen to walk. Your way of speaking is seriously, wait a second, He used unnecessarily convoluted words, but after thinking about it for a second he basically meant, I'll handle my own business, so leave me alone. If the Soul King himself steps up and says that, what can I do? I have to respect his wishes. Yeah, well, do whatever you want. As I replied while scratching my head, the Soul King nodded and turned his body to leave. Wait right there. Where do you think you're going after dumping another load of crap on me? It is a task only you can perform. What kind of nonsense is that? Am I your personal junk collector? I'm already exhausted just dealing with that one guy over there, and now you want me to raise a rowdy brat too? I ask this of you. There is not much time left. I'm to die soon, so please help me out just this once. Hearing the weight behind those words, I let out a deep sigh and scratched my head. When he puts it like that, how can I possibly tell him to take her back because it's a hassle? And since these are the words of a man willingly giving his life for the world, I naturally have to grant them. Ha. Fine. So there are 3 now? It is so. Right. It won't take long, I guess. It will be but an instant. After I nodded and waved my hand dismissively, the Soul King looked at me for a moment before vanishing in an instant. I stared at the spot where he had stood and let out a sigh. Since I said I'd take her in, I guess I have to look after her. Yes, I turned my head with a heavy sigh. The dark-skinned brat who had been trembling under the tree just moments ago was gone. What? Where'd she go? My disciple usually disappears whenever he has nothing left to say or do, so whatever. But this rowdy Shohoin girl, where did she go? She was passed out just a second ago. Over here. Oops, my shoelace. Hearing a voice from directly behind me, I ducked as if tying a shoelace, naturally avoiding the kick aimed at my head. The truth is, I don't even have shoelaces, I'm barefoot, but mocking someone like this is extremely effective at getting under their skin. He avoided my attack from this distance? That's because I knew exactly where you were. Was it Sonito or Shuinpa? No, was it neither? Regardless, I can sense the presence of the Soul King, who uses a form of high-speed movement even more advanced than those teleport-like techniques. How could I possibly miss the presence of this brat who's practically radiating a bloodlust that screams, I'm going to leave a footprint on your face? You tricked me. Hey kid, do you know what bluffing is? Bluff ing? Make sure you remember it, kid. A time will come when it'll be useful. I am asking you what this bluffing thing is. Man, you're impatient. Fine, since the Soul King asked me to look after you, I'll give you a special explanation. Open your ears and listen carefully. As I spoke and crossed my arms, I saw the Shohoin brat leaning in to listen, despite her clear wariness. That should do it. What bluffing means is... wait. Why is the Soul King back? Huh? Lord Soul King. The brat's eyes went wide as she whipped her head around, but of course the Soul King wasn't there. Because I was lying. It was a lie, you idiot. The Soul King is the type who never looks back once he leaves. You bastard. Before she could finish saying you tricked me again, I struck her on the back of the head and knocked her out cold. Phew. Finally, some peace and quiet. Chapter 20, Dumping Duty. A few days had passed since the Soul King departed. Then the Soul King returned. But unlike his usual habit of flashing here and there like some elusive phantom, he was walking slowly from the entrance of the forest. The hell? Did you forget something? Actually, you didn't have anything to leave behind in the first place, did you? Ah, wait. There is one thing. It's not an object, it's a person, but there is one guy he left behind. Actually, thinking about it, there are two. Lately, one has been unnervingly quiet and the other one. Take this. With my arms crossed, I tilted my head slightly to dodge the kick. I snatched the thin ankle passing by my head and hoisted it up, holding it upside down like a fisherman showing off a fresh catch. Don't you ever get tired? Or do you get muscle cramps if you don't throw at least one kick a day? I will not stop until I have punished the one who committed such insolence against the Soul King. She kept stomping on my arm with her free foot as if telling me to let go, but in all honesty it felt like a high-performance massager. Judging by how her dark skin was turning beet red, she seemed to be stomping with all her might. Ah, never mind. It's just because all the blood is rushing to her head from being upside down. This. Let go. Realizing her kicks weren't working, or perhaps out of pure spite, she thrust a punch toward my groin. Male instinct made my hips recoil automatically, but on second thought, if my arms were fine after those stomps, this should be okay too. Asterisk thwack. Asterisk. I was a bit worried, but fortunately everything was intact. I was ready to let go and retreat the moment I felt even a hint of impact, but luckily I felt nothing at all, so I stayed still. That tickles, kid. Why, you traitor? Why are you so hard? No, are you a eunuch? Hey now, despite appearances, I've got a body where a dragon rises every morning. It really does stand tall. It's just that there's no use for it since there are no people around. A Shahoin? Well, if someone actually got turned on by this tomboy, they'd seriously need to visit a doctor, though obviously there are no hospitals in this era. Oomph. A dragon? Don't make me laugh. It's probably just a little worm. This brat. I was going to let it slide, but how dare she wound a man's pride? I guess I have no choice. What are you trying to do? Why, you traitor. You beast in heat. Let go. I said let go. If someone heard the noise, they might misunderstand the situation, but it wasn't like that at all. To begin with, this Shahoin kid is a shrimp with the physical development of a middle schooler at best. And by middle school development, I don't mean a curvy, well-endowed body like that honey-eyed level 5 Esper from a certain academy city. No, she's the polar opposite, a flat, cylindrical frame. It was a physique where you could never imagine her being the ancestor of Lady Yurichi, who would one day be responsible for the sexual curiosity of people in the distant future. Getting horny over a shrimp like this, it's not even worth refuting. In fact, getting angry and arguing here would only make the picture look weirder. Sigh. With a deep sigh, I set the kid down on the ground, but for some reason the kid looked up at me with an utterly shocked expression. What? You're not going to do anything? You think I'm crazy? I scanned this unshahoin-like Shahoin from head to toe, then lightly massaged my eyelids. I shouldn't say it. Yeah, that would be sexual harassment. And since defamation by telling the truth exists, there's no need to poke where it hurts. No, forget it. Sigh. Don't sigh. I'm still growing. Then go eat more of the food my disciple cooked, kid. I'm busy, so shoo. Ugh. Despite having no pride to stand on, she glared at me with an incredibly insulted expression. Resting her fists on her flat chest, she let out a groan that brought the number 72 foot to mind and stomped away. While watching the receding back of the Shahoin girl, I turned my head toward the direction where I felt another presence. Perhaps they had been gauging the timing from afar, but as soon as the Shahoin girl left, the Soul King and a man with a surprisingly Shiba clan L. Okay walked out. I knew who this guy was the moment I laid eyes on him. How? Because he looked so much like Ichigo's father that it was impossible not to know that if the resemblance was just vague or only featured a few traits, I might have missed it, but he was a goddamn carbon copy. Of course, the hairstyle and a few details were different, but the moment I saw him I got the vibe. Ah, so this is him. A Shiba then? Oh. Do you know me? Haha. I just received my name, and to think someone already knows who I am. I have mountains of things left to learn, so I wasn't planning on becoming famous just yet. Ha 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 ha. Seeing him return 10 words for every one I spoke, yup, he's definitely a Shiba. Beyond that, his voice is damnably loud that I frowned at the itching sensation in my ears and dug in one with my pinky. Ha 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 ha. My voice is a bit on the loud side, isn't it? Thanks to that, I've fought many hollows. Oh, speaking of hollows, it reminds me of how I'm still inexperienced and couldn't take them down in a single blow. Whether he was the ultimate self-affirmation man or just horribly oblivious, Shiba laughed and began rambling about his own story despite my reaction. He even started from his days of inexperience, just like a legendary major league pitcher who begins every single story from his time back in LA. Asterisk, it feels less like he brought a Shiba and more like he brought Park Chan-ho. Asterisk, no, I was going to let it go to some extent, but this is a real pile of crap. Living with him for even a month would make my brain go mushy. Hey, look at me. Don't look away. Hey. For the record, I wasn't saying this to the Shiba guy or my disciple, that I was saying this to the Soul King. Seriously, you're dumping this on me and leaving? Hey. You're just dumping him on me because you couldn't stand him either, right? That is not it. So, taking that incident as a lesson, I thought I couldn't stay as I was and began training hard on my own. But as they say, isn't it better to have a great master than to be self-taught? That's why the hell it isn't. Do you think I don't know you usually visit once every 3 or 5 years? If you're going to lie, at least make it a believable one. I simply brought him along because I was nearby by chance. Chance my ass, you bastard. With your teleportation, the other side of the planet is nearby. Just be honest. You dumped this Shiba guy on me because traveling with him was a pain in the ass. Huh. And then, just at the right moment, didn't an excellent master appear right before my eyes? That was my first meeting with the Soul King. At first, I was so shocked that I uncharacteristically fell backward, but the Soul King, in his vast generosity, forgave my insolence and… Damn, why does this guy talk so much? Was the Shiba clan this talkative in the original? Wait, was the explaining character trope in Bleach actually born because of this guy? Since he's the protagonist's bloodline, he probably has a philandering streak, and since he's not the protagonist, he'll probably have multiple wives, right? And that's why the Bleach world is filled with people who talk unnecessarily much. Asterisk aha. So that's what it was. Asterisk, or is it that the ancestor of the Shiba clan in the original isn't this Shiba guy? Wait, are the original Shiba and this Shiba two different Shibas, goddammit? The realization was so staggering it made my hair stand on end. I let out a sigh and rubbed my dry face. Wait. Oh. Fine. Fine. Just leave him and go. My thanks. The Soul King said that and vanished as if he were escaping. That it was the same teleportation-like disappearance as always, but… Seeing him say thanks, he definitely dumped him on me. That son of a bitch. And so… Oh, it seems the Soul King has departed. My word, it's a shame. I still had so much I wanted to talk about. Judging by how short that sentence was, he seemed genuinely disappointed. Being near this guy will definitely give me a mental breakdown. Follow me. You'll be staying here for a while. Oh, are you going to be my master? I'm not good at teaching others. Just don't come at me at random times like the kid who lives here. Otherwise, just come out and train with me when I train in the morning. So you mean to say we shall balance practice and theory? Ha ha ha. As expected. Ever since I decided to follow the Soul King, I knew good things would happen, but to gain a wonderful master and a safe place to sleep away from hollows. Next time the Soul King visits, should I tell him to shut up for just 1 minute? If he could just be quiet until I can dump him on Tsuneyashiro, that would be great. Thinking that, I glanced at the Shiba guy, shook my head, and wandered through the forest to find my disciple. Fortunately, my disciple had been busy researching something lately and wouldn't leave his house, so it wasn't hard to find him. When I kicked the door open and entered, Tsuneyashiro jumped and hurried to hide something. Seeing how he's hiding it, it's probably nothing important. That guy's the type to leave truly important things out in the open to confuse people after all. Anyway, whatever. What brings you here so suddenly, master? Nothing much. Here, say hello. This is the Shiba guy who'll be staying with you. Shiba, this is Tsuneyashiro Jamin. My disciple. Oh. Since you entered before me, that makes you my senior brother. I see. I am Shiba Shiryu. A pleasure to meet you, senior brother. I am Tsunishiro Jamin. My disciple accepted the greeting with a lukewarm expression and then looked at me that I could tell exactly what he was thinking. It was the face of someone saying, "Why are you dumping this guy on me?" Well, someone dumped him on me, so I'm dumping him on you. So what? If it pisses you off, go find your own disciple and dump him there. Chapter 21. A choice between two evils. It has already been a month since I pawned that Shiba fellow off on my disciple and returned to my usual routine. Looking back, dumping Shiba on that disciple of mine was truly a stroke of genius, to be honest. I didn't have high expectations when I first did it, that I didn't think even my disciple would be able to handle a mouth that rivaled a legendary windbag. But somehow, now that a month has passed, Shiba has become remarkably quiet compared to when I first saw him. It's as if he only speaks when absolutely necessary. At first, I thought he just realized there was absolutely nothing to do in this forest, but I realized I was wrong when he suddenly found me during my training and unleashed a 10,000-word tirade of gratitude. That mouth of doom wasn't quiet because he ran out of things to say. It was more like he stayed silent because he had finally babbled enough to satisfy himself for the day. The proof of this was the increasingly haggard face of my disciple. Thank you, my disciple. Thanks to you, your master can live in peace. Of course, I haven't returned to the peaceful days before these burdens arrived, but at least I've avoided a daily life shared with Shiba, so this is enough for now. You're doing God's work. The more I think about Shiba, the more he reminds me of a dog. No, I'm not cursing him. I mean he's literally like a canine that he can't stay still for a second, plays with all his might, chattering, until he gets bored, and once he's exhausted he becomes satisfied and quiet. He's exactly like a dog. In fact, I wonder if Shiba's bloodline is mixed with the ancestors of Kamamura, the guy who left behind that legendary comedy gold of Captain, why did you become a dog? At the very end, good grief, does that mean someone was into furries? Lord, the degeneracy. Phew. I let out a deep sigh and wiped my face with my hands. I haven't been sleeping well lately because of all the things on my mind, so nonsense is just spilling out of my head. I should get some sleep. The weather was cool and the sunlight was warm, so I lay down on the grass to catch a quick nap. Just as my consciousness was beginning to drift away, my eyelids twitched at a rustling sound. It wasn't just the sound of leaves brushing in the wind, it was the sound of something treading on grass. Who is it? I could have just checked the presence, but I was so close to falling asleep that even that felt like a chore, so I just listened. The Soul King floats around like some Protoss building, so it wouldn't be him. The footsteps are too light to be my disciple, and if it were Shiba, he would have shouted ha 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 the moment he appeared. That leaves only one option. Is it you again, Shohoin? How did you know it was me without even opening your eyes? I can tell by the footsteps. You're the only one around here who wanders around that quietly. Technically, my disciple is quiet too, but he's different from Shohoin. The disciple feels like a stalker sneaking up from a distance to watch, whereas Shohoin feels more like an assassin. If you listen closely, there's a subtle difference. So what brings you here on foot today? Usually you start by throwing a kick. Do you take me for some brute who knows nothing but violence? Am I wrong? I am not. I chuckled at her irritated voice. Come to think of it, has there ever been a time when she didn't use violence? No, never. The moment I open my eyes in the morning, she greets me with a kick, and even during my training she sneaks up to deliver a high-octane strike. Of course, that's not the end of it. There are many more instances, but listing them all would take all night, so I skipped them. Actually, the reason I've become so sensitive to presences is because of this brat. She sneaks up at the most random times. It was impossible not to get twitchy. Anyway, when someone like that says, "Do you think I just go around beating people up all the time?" The answer is already decided. Yes, you are. What's so new about that? Seriously, have you no conscience? When I opened my eyes and replied with that look on my face, Shohoin shut her mouth, pouted, and sat down next to me. It was strange to see her not react by kicking me in annoyance like she usually would. No, it wasn't just strange, it was very bizarre. What's with you today? Did something happen to give you actual worries? When I laughed and asked, Shohoin fumbled with her words as if to say something, then let out a deep sigh and looked down. I blinked at her unusually serious demeanor, sat up, and faced her properly. I was quite flustered because this girl, who seemed to be filled with nothing but anger from head to toe, was acting like this. Well, she's human, or a soul anyway, so of course she'd have worries. But the atmosphere suggested this was no ordinary concern. What is it? It is about the Soul King. The moment the name of the Soul King left Shihoin's mouth, I could faintly guess why she was suddenly plagued by such thoughts, and no matter how dull or stupid someone might be, staying in the same place for years means overhearing things. As the saying goes, even a school dog learns to recite poems after 3 years. Shihoin might seem like a tomboy, but she's surprisingly perceptive and sharp. How could she spend years in the same space as my disciple, who thinks the Soul King must die or vanish, without noticing anything? She isn't an airhead like Shiba. There was no way she wouldn't notice. So that's what she was agonizing over. Is it because of Tsuneshiro? Ha! There is a reason that lawless man calls you his master. Look at that attitude. So what, did he tell you to your face that the Soul King must die or something? That is sacrilege. No. It is sacrilegious, but, looking at her reaction, it wasn't just because of a simple "the Soul King should die" remark. Judging by her state, she probably heard my disciple ranting about the Soul King and tried to challenge him to a duel to the death for his blasphemy, only to get swept up in his silver-tongued logic and end up hearing the whole story. Is it true that the Soul King's existence is a threat to this world? Sure enough, the exact question I expected popped out. While I was debating how to answer her, Shihoin suddenly squeezed her eyes shut and reached out, covering my mouth with her hand. Wait. I am not yet mentally prepared. MMPH. My words came out muffled because her hand was pressed firmly against my mouth. Shihoin blinked, looked at me, and then chuckled softly. Pfft. I can't understand a single word you're saying. That's because you're the one covering my mouth, you brat. I gave her a flat look and then licked her palm. Eek! What are you doing? How filthy! I was suffocating, you brat. Ignoring Shihoin's horrified expression, I continued. You probably heard my disciple say the world will end if the Soul King stays alive. Or you heard something very similar, maybe something even more detailed. Am I right? Yes. Tsuneshiro said that as the Soul King eradicates hollows, the erasure that makes up this world is literally being annihilated. Because of that, as long as the Soul King exists, this world is destined to perish. He certainly gave you the full rundown. The details matched exactly what I knew, so he had definitely told her everything. But for some reason I felt like that wasn't the end of it.no, there's no way it ended there. Based on what I've seen of my disciple, he's the type to spill every bit of information he has to anyone he considers to be on his side. For the record, his criteria for someone being on his side refers to someone he can fully comprehend, someone he deems lesser or stupider than himself. But that's not all, is it? He must have said more. Tsuneshiro said nothing more. She is a terrible liar. She was so bad at lying it almost made me burst out laughing. Given her reaction, he definitely said something. If he had only said the Soul King had to die, Shihoin wouldn't be this confly. Say to convince a Soul King fangirl like Shihoin, he would have shared various theories and hypotheses, and the proposed solution would have been, I bet the topic of sealing the Soul King came up. How did you? Gasp. It's because you're a terrible liar, and also because knowing your personality, if he had only said he wanted to kill the king because he was dangerous, you would have never left him in one piece. Ha. You already know everything then? Not everything. Just what I know. In that case, is the Soul King really a threat to this world? I fell silent for a moment, pondering her circular question. If the Soul King does not eradicate hollows, the hollows will devour every last soul and eventually destroy themselves, leading to the end of the world. However, if the Soul King is kept as he is, the erasure of this world will eventually vanish, as Tsuneshiro said, and the world will naturally collapse. In the end. It's a choice between two evils. A forced choice between resignation and obsession. There was much I could say, but if the question was simply whether the Soul King's existence was a threat to the world or not, yes. If the Soul King remains as he is, this world will one day meet its end. That was the only answer I could give, and that was the end the Soul King himself desired. Saying this, I slightly turned my head to look toward the distance, where my disciple was hiding behind a tree, and then I closed my eyes. Chapter 22. Sense of direction. After I told her the world would end if the Soul King existed, Shihoin stopped the daily ambushes she used to perform like clockwork, though calling them ambushes is a stretch when all she did was hide in a tree and launch a hectopascal kick at my head. Either way, it was a welcome change for me, so I didn't think much of it. Worry? Why would I worry about that tomboy? Even in the original story where I didn't exist, she handled herself just fine, ending up as one of the great 4 or 5 noble families with plenty of strong descendants. My goal is simple. Stay out of the original plot as much as possible and live how I want. If I can save some people from pathetic deaths, I will. If I feel I shouldn't, I won't. Yeah. I shouldn't meddle. I just need to look after myself. So, how has Shohoin been lately? But I couldn't help being a little curious. If it had been some random guy, I would have told him to look after himself and moved on. But Shohoin, despite her wild nature, was like a cute little sister to me. Feeling slightly concerned, I went to ask the one person who would likely know. Why are you asking me that? My disciple looked at me, letting out a sharp breath through his nose as if he couldn't bring himself to sigh openly in my face. Because you'd know her better than anyone else here. I was being serious. There are currently 4 people living in this forest, me, my disciple Shohoin, and that Shiba fellow who joined most recently. Among us, who would know the most about Shohoin? First, let's exclude that Shiba guy since he arrived last. Actually, even if he had been the first to arrive, he's the type to only talk about himself and wouldn't notice what Shohoin was up to anyway. That leaves me and my disciple. And frankly, I don't have much interest in how others live their lives. That I'm not proud of it, but it's the truth. How could a guy who finds it a chore just to look after his own lazy self have the spare mental energy to worry about others? Anyway, all that aside, in the end, only my disciple is left. It doesn't mean he definitely knows, but he'd know much more than me or the Shiba guy. I fail to see why you are so certain, master. At my words, my disciple looked at me with a sour expression. He looked as though he found my absolute confidence absurd. True, they've never actually been seen hanging out together. But seeing how my disciple, the Shiba guy, and the Shohoin woman, along with a few others, eventually cracked open the Soul King's back in the original story and became the 4 or 5 noble families, they had to have been intertwined somehow. Excluding my disciple who feared the Soul King's power, Shohoin and Shiba both trusted and followed the king who had saved their lives. That if he could shake those two with mere words and persuade them to join his side, it's safe to assume he can read them like an open book. So why are you inquiring about Shohoin? Even if I brought this up, my disciple would probably just play the I'm just a private individual card and maintain his ignorance. That I can see it now. It's nothing much. She seemed to have something on her mind, so I gave her a bit of counseling. But then she suddenly stopped her daily ambushes. I thought you might know something, but if you don't, then never mind. Counseling, you say? My disciple spoke as he lowered his eyes. In that split second as he bowed his head, his gaze turned chillingly sharp. It was the look of someone clearly about to stir up some trouble. That he was probably thinking about what to do with Shohoin now that she might have leaked his plans. Or perhaps he was thinking about what to do with me, since I seemed to know everything about his schemes. Neither prospect sat well with me. Hey. When I tapped him on the shoulder with the back of my hand, he flinched and jerked his head up. Kid, look at those eyes. They're so scary I can barely talk to you. I don't care what you do, but stick to 2 rules. 1, don't annoy me. 2, don't cause any unnecessary ruckus in this forest. Got it? Understood. You're so smart that even your understood sounds ominous. Anyway, yeah. I'm leaving, so keep things within reasonable limits. As I turned around and waved my hand, I felt his gaze following me with a subtle intensity. A stinging sensation pricked at my heart. It wasn't that he was planning what to do with Shohoin for blabbing. It was that he was trying to figure out what to do with me for knowing. Ugh, damn it, it was the latter. Things would have gotten a lot more annoying if I had poked further. Sigh. This is why smart bastards are so annoying. They could just say things directly, but they have to overthink and make everything complicated. If I hadn't explicitly said I didn't care what he did, I might have ended up taxidermied right alongside the Soul King. But still, chuckling to myself as I walked, I suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. I am called his master, after all. A little lesson in manners shouldn't hurt, right? Asterisk. Watching my master's receding back as he trudged away, I bit my lip. How much does he truly know? I already knew that he was aware of my plan to seal the Soul King. That was unavoidable. After all, it was Master himself who provided the catalyst for that plan through his wood carvings. Not simply negating and killing the Soul King's existence, but a being that looks down upon the world. In other words, by Puli. Ing a god down to our level, we make him a piece that composes the world, thereby establishing a firmer and safer universe. It's only natural he knows that much. But there was one massive variable in this plan, the existence of Master himself. Master could sabotage or overturn this plan whenever he wished. A single whim from him could turn everything I've built into nothingness. That was why I had factored in Master's interference and whims into my calculations, performing them thousands, no, tens of thousands of times to establish a plan that would yield the best possible result. Therefore, Master simply knowing about the plan wasn't the issue. The puzzling part was, I don't care what you do, but stick to 2 rules. 1. Don't annoy me. 2. Don't cause any unnecessary ruckus in this forest. The fact that Master knew everything and simply let it slide, even the fact that I wouldn't touch him, and the fact that my plan involved peeling this entire forest away from the world to leave it floating for eternity, made it even more incomprehensible. Just how much do you know? If you know all that, why don't you stop me? Why don't you resist? It is different from the Soul King. The Soul King is closer to a phenomenon. I know he is indifferent even to his own death. But Master, that entity is different. He feels joy, anger, sorrow, and pleasure. He is a deeply emotional being. Why then, knowing his own safety is at risk, does he take no action? Is it a manifestation of confidence that he can stop anything? Or is it a bluff because he has no way to stop it? It was as I was glaring at him with gritted teeth that I felt my entire upper body, from my neck to my hips, explode. It was as if I couldn't withstand the pressure and had literally been reduced to a mere handful of blood. Guhhk? My breath hitched, and with a spinning sensation in my head, my legs gave out. A sharp ringing filled my ears, and my vision went black for an instant. Huff! The moment light flooded back into my blurred vision, my heart, which had stopped for a fleeting moment, began to pound again. Startled, I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling the heavy thud of my heart performing its duty. My heart, it was beating all along. No one explained it to me, but I knew. What just happened was the result of my senses sharpening to the extreme upon sensing a lethal threat, causing my body to react as if it had died. And that threat of death was because my body, unable to withstand the killing intent sent by the entity standing before me, had instinctively surrendered to death. The area beneath my eyes trembled uncontrollably. He is on a different dimension. Thinking his whims would derail the plan? Ha! I was arrogant, that I was far too overconfident in myself, that I shouldn't have been worrying about the plan going awry. I should have been worrying about how to stay alive right now. Yes, I lowered my head and swallowed hard. A voice drifted down from directly above me. I hadn't even noticed him approaching. You shouldn't glare at your esteemed master like that. I apologize. That thing, no master, had the power to kill me easily, yet he chose to remain as my master. While terrified, I felt a terrifyingly deep sense of relief at that fact. You don't look so good. Go inside and sleep if you're tired. Thank you for your concern. The touch of his hand patting my shoulder was undoubtedly gentle, but my body could only tremble helplessly at the contact of such an incomprehensible existence. *****. I had just finished teaching some manners to my disciple, who was suddenly sending killing intent my way, and was taking a stroll through the nearby forest. Just then, I felt someone approaching the forest. At first, I thought the Soul King was bringing someone else, but I couldn't sense the Soul King's presence. Who is it? My head was already a bit cluttered, so this was a welcome distraction. With that thought, I headed toward the source of the presence, but the presence suddenly turned around. What? Did they sense me? To think someone had such excellent spiritual sensing abilities. Curious, I moved closer, but they suddenly changed direction again. This time they were heading right toward me. What is this guy doing? Just in case, I stopped in my tracks. The presence coming toward me immediately veered off in another direction. After that, the presence turned 7 more times before finally coming to a dead stop. At this point, I didn't even need to look to know. This person has absolutely zero sense of direction. The owner of this presence wasn't reacting to me at all. They were just a hopeless, direction-challenged mess. Sigh, I should go see who it is. I'm curious, and I can't just leave them out there for days. It'll start to bug me. Trudging over to where they were, I found a black-haired woman crouching on the ground. I'm going to die here. What kind of person tries to die in someone else's front yard? Chapter 23. Who are you? A recap of the story so far. I stepped out for a stroll after beating some basic etiquette into my insolent disciple, only to find someone suspiciously loitering around. I went to investigate, wondering who it could be, only to find a pathetic soul who had decided to use someone else's front yard as their own grave. Just who could this person be? Sob hic sniff wah, hnnng. Ugh, cough. She's really crying her eyes out. Seriously, who is this? Looking at that black hair, she gives off a bit of a Kachiki vibe, but the thought that the stoic ancestor of the Kachiki clan could be such a crybaby just wouldn't leave my head. Are you telling me that Byakuya's ancestor was a woman who sat down and blubbered tears and snot everywhere just because she got lost? Wow. That's a bit much. Kachiki Rukia? No, she was originally from the Rukongai. She's an adoptee with no blood relation to the Kachiki family, so let's move past that. Anyway, then who is it? If it is the Kachiki ancestor, it's a bit tragic. If not, she could be a member of the 5 noble families that was never revealed. Or if she just took a wrong turn, well, then it's truly tragic. Whatever the case, I should probably take her with me. It's not like I'm worried about my property value dropping, that if this were a society with an economic system developed enough to worry about that, I would have ditched this place a long time ago. The reason I'm planning to take her in isn't anything special, that if I hadn't known, that'd be one thing. But knowing someone is alive and just leaving them there leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But when is she going to notice me? Actually, I've been sitting on a tree stump about 10 paces away for the last 10 minutes, watching to see when she'd notice my presence. Does that make me malicious? Spare me, you only say that because you don't know the situation. The person in question is a faint-hearted lady crying on the ground. Because she got a little lost. If a dark, brooding man like me suddenly popped up in front of a lady like that, how would she react? I can't even imagine it. Regardless, it probably wouldn't be a good reaction, that's why I'm simply waiting for the other person to notice and look my way first. It's an act of showing, I have no intention of harming you. This is definitely not the perverted act of a voyeur watching someone cry. I am a gentleman. As soon as I thought that and nodded, the triangle in my heart known as my conscience began to thrash about that it was cursing at me, calling me a shameless bastard. Fine. To be honest, I'm just waiting because I have no idea how to comfort a crying woman. Come to think of it, I haven't met a single woman in the decades since I woke up in the world of Bleach. Virgin? Of course I'm a virgin, damn it, Shahoin? That tomboy isn't a woman. She's a beast. Anyway, how could someone like me know the way to comfort a woman who's crying her heart out? That's why I'm just watching, that if I tried to strike up a conversation for no reason and got told to get lost, it would probably hurt my feelings a bit. Sniff, just how long are you going to keep watching me? Oh, what? Thinking maybe she'd called out by mistake, I slightly hid my presence, but the crying woman turned her head and looked exactly toward me. So you knew? Sniff, sob, well, hick. You were staring at me from such a close distance, sniff. Of course I knew. Do you think I'm stupid? Finding something else to be miserable about, she burst into a fresh round of sorrowful wailing. She was crying so loudly the heavens themselves could hear it, making me feel like I was the villain here. Ah, all right, I'm sorry. Stop crying now. Hick, sniff. You. Sigh. Letting out a deep sigh, I approached the woman. She flinched, gave me a sidelong glance, sniffled, and then scooted over a bit. It didn't feel like she was avoiding me particularly, but more like someone giving up a seat on the subway. You want me to sit next to you? Sniff, are you also lost, mister? Who are you calling mister? Eek. Sorry. I was going to say that I wasn't quite old enough to be a mister yet, but the woman immediately put on a crying face and curled inward. This is unfair. I really haven't done anything, but somehow the conversation. No, it's not even a conversation. Just by standing here, I feel like I'm becoming the bad guy. Ha. I'm not angry, I'm not going to interrogate you, and I won't do anything to you, so just stop crying. You're making me look like a monster. Sniff. Then, just a moment. Please give me some time. She's been crying for ages and she wants more time. I almost let out an unconscious sigh, but I held it in, fearing she would burst into tears again if I did. Seriously, how can she be more of a brat than the Shahoin kid? Wait, no. Shahoin is a brat in a different sense. Now there are 2 brats. Wow, damn. Just imagining it gives me the chills. Ugh, hell. It's horrific, truly horrific. As I waited idly with my arms crossed, the woman, who had been sniffling to herself for quite a while, finally let out a long breath. Thinking she was finished, I opened my eyes only to see her clutching her fists tight and muttering something to herself. It's okay. I can do this. He's not a hollow. Since he's not a hollow. So this woman ended up here after running away from something, just like I did. A sense of empathy, support, and solidarity washed over me, shifting my image of her from just a tearful brat to a pitiful woman whose heart had grown frail from suffering. I suppose anyone would be like that after being chased by a hollow, yeah. That makes sense, wait? No. I wasn't chased by a hollow, I was chased by the Soul King. Well, being chased is being chased, so I guess it doesn't matter to us. I was thinking that. The woman finally spoke up. Are you by any chance the master of this forest? Judging by how she's stealing glances while she speaks, she's still quite timid and I guess she was just born that way. It's polite to state your own name before asking someone else's. Well. I don't have a name yet. Since she made it all the way here, I assumed she was associated with the other families or the Soul King, but I guess not. I scratched my head. If you don't have a name, there's nothing for it. Are you going to kick me out? Kicking someone out just because they don't have a name is a bit much, don't you think? I'm not that much of a piece of trash. T my words, the woman's eyes sparkled. Then please help me. I want to get out of here, but the forest is so vast, no matter how much I walk it never ends. HNNG. The forest isn't vast, you've just been spinning around in circles in the same spot. What? Me? The woman blinked and looked around. Looking at her reaction, she wasn't acting, she genuinely didn't know. If you'd marked the trees or something as you went, you wouldn't have been going in circles. I know that much. But the trees here are so hard I can't even leave a scratch on them. Are the trees here really that hard? I reached out and gripped the tree right next to me. With a crunch, the wood was crushed into the shape of my hand. Seems to mark just fine to me. Heek. Monster. If you're shocked by just this, you'll faint when you see the Soul King later, but calling me a monster is a bit harsh. I'm sorry. I was just so surprised. As long as you know you were wrong, fine. Anyway, we can't just stay here forever, so follow me. Where are we going? Deeper into the forest. I asked for help getting out of the forest, so why are we going deeper? The woman covered her chest with both hands, taking a pose that screamed, "You're planning to ravish me." Just like in an erotogen. How ridiculous. This is an absolute forced frame-up. It's nothing like that, so don't get the wrong idea. I'm just saying it's safer deeper in. It's safer deeper in? At least there are no hollows. If you want to leave, I can send you out. But are you okay with that fear chasing you again once you leave the forest? Hollows are scary. You. By any chance, is there anyone else inside besides you, mister? About 3 others, a tomboy brat, a shady disciple, and a talkative guy named Sheba. And sometimes the Soul King and the baldy monk drop by. That's quite a lot, right? Tell me about it. At first I was living here alone in peace. How did it end up with so many people? Sigh. So are you going or not? I'll go. Right, follow, huh? Speak of the devil. How could they show up the second I mention them? What? Is it? The Soul King and the baldy monk I mentioned just arrived. None of those guys can take a hint. Well, one of them is a king, so I guess it doesn't matter. The Soul King probably came because he had business, and I'll have to tell the monk to give this woman a name while he's at it. With those thoughts in mind, I brought the woman back to where the Soul King was, and, oh ho! If it isn't the Forerunner. It has been 20 years. Ha 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 ha. What the hell is that lump? Where did that kid go, and why is there a Daruma sitting there? That's the original Hyasuba Chibe. He looks so different from when he was a kid that I almost didn't recognize him. Chapter 24, Final Request. The monk, whom I had just called a lump, stared at me with wide eyes, as if he hadn't expected to be addressed that way. His eyes were already massive, so seeing them bulge further was honestly a bit much. I was about to tell him to stop staring, but the monk's boisterous laughter cut me off. Wahahot. A lump? Forerunner, you are too cruel. Or perhaps you truly do not recognize me because my appearance has changed a little? No, if anything, this look is more familiar. I'm just surprised. I never imagined that little brat from back then would turn into this bald Dharma in just 20 years. I expected it to take at least a century, but you're much faster than I anticipated. Wahahot. Dharma. Another word I've never heard before. Even with the passing of time, you still speak of things only you understand. Well, I suppose that is exactly why you are the Forerunner. Pay it no mind and speak your piece. The monk, no, maybe it's better to call him Dharma now. Regardless, the way this Dharma fellow laughed so heartily was the spitting image of the Achibe Hyasub from my memories. It was enough to give me goosebumps. So what brings you here? The Soul King didn't come alone today, he even brought Dharma along. Not that I'm complaining, it makes my job easier. I directed my question at the Soul King, but he merely glanced at me briefly before looking away in silence. Yeah, well, I figured he'd do that. So what's the story? I am nearing the end of my task of naming all things. I stopped by with the Soul King to see if you had created something new in my absence. But more importantly, it seems your guest list has grown since I last visited. Oh, her. Dharma's gaze shifted toward the woman I had brought back. Naturally, there was no way she could remain composed while facing the monk's oppressively large, staring eyes. Haik? The moment their eyes met, the woman dove behind my back, trembling violently. Dharma simply let out a loud laugh at the sight. Listen here, you bastard. She's terrified of your face. Laughing like that only makes it worse that I wanted to say that out loud, but since the woman had been terrified of my face too, I felt awkward commenting on someone else's looks. Criticizing his face would be like spitting at the sky for me. Oh-ho? Wahahat. Indeed, it seems she is frightened by my eyes. It is never wise to judge a person by their appearance, yet I cannot fault one whose nature is simply timid. She's relatively normal compared to some others. After all, there was a lunatic hiding behind that tree over there who is far more cowardly and dangerous than this woman. A crazy bastard who decides that anything he doesn't understand is scary, and since it's scary, he should bash its head in and taxidermy it. Thinking about it, I recalled a similar character. Definitely. What was it? A guy who was the final boss in another anime. Unknown equals fear equals kill it all to remove the source of fear. There was definitely a madman who had that shitty logic etched into his brain. Was it Azura? I didn't remember clearly, but it probably was. Anyway, if my disciple wasn't the crucial key to creating the world of the original series, I would have beaten him to death a long time ago. You can't just let a psycho like that loose in society. Indeed, indeed. With those thoughts, I turned my head toward the direction where I sensed my disciple. I could see him lurking behind a tree, watching the Soul King. Why does that guy get more sinister with every passing day? And now that I look closer, he hides behind that same tree every time the Soul King visits. What are you thinking so deeply about? Oh, just this and that. Nothing important. Those seemingly unimportant thoughts sometimes bring massive changes to another person's world. If you don't mind, could you share those trivial thoughts with me? I told this crazy bastard to study philosophy, and he actually came back as a philosopher. It's not even an era where actual philosophers have established anything yet, so whatever he says is just going to be pseudo-intellectual nonsense anyway. So that's why he aged so fast. I've committed a grave sin. I've ruined a man's hair follicles. If he hadn't gone down the path of philosophy, he would have stayed youthful for at least 30 more years. While his beard is still lush, his scalp would have been much thicker than it is now. I looked at Dharma with a lukewarm expression before letting out a deep sigh and shaking my head. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand, so why bother? Instead of that, take a look at this woman's name. A bit disappointing, but I suppose there will be plenty of opportunities to talk later. Anyway, her name. Let's see, I don't know what he's so disappointed about. Regardless, Dharma widened his eyes again, peering at the woman. Predictably, the woman shivered and buried herself deeper behind my back. This is troublesome. I thought I couldn't see her name because she was hiding, but it turns out she simply has no name yet. I suppose it can't be helped. I shall bestow a name. Just as Hyasib was about to offer a name, the Soul King approached and spoke. Kachiki. Wait, what? She really was a Kachiki? Seriously? Her? This creature, who was like a pure manifestation of fluctuating emotions, was the ancestor of that stone-faced Kachiki clan. I blinked in disbelief, and the Soul King, after watching the woman for a moment, continued. Kachiki Myron. That is her name. I see. If the Soul King said it with that much certainty, then she really must be the Kachiki ancestor. I had my suspicions, but for it to be true. So the names gathered so far are Tsunyashiro, Shihoin, Shiba, and Kachiki. That makes 4, and if one more shows up, it'll be the 5 noble houses or else. Wait. They said the Shiba clan was expelled, yet they were still part of the 4 great noble houses. That means there's still one more left. I don't even know the name of the last one. Who could it be? Kachiki. Myron. Whoa, are you still stuck to my back? Leaving the woman, no, Kachiki, behind me, I walked toward the Soul King. The Soul King acknowledged my approach and stepped beside me. Let us move elsewhere. Sure. The Soul King nodded and blinked. A truly bizarre sensation enveloped my body and vanished in an instant. When I opened my eyes as the feeling faded, the surrounding scenery had completely changed. It was the boundary where the desert met the plains, the very place where I had fled desperately from the Soul King and where he had relentlessly pursued me. This place, it is where we first met, and where my end shall be. That single sentence, uttered in a low voice as if it were nothing special, was enough to strike me dumb. Why was he saying this now? What was he thinking? I knew why. It meant his work was done. Dharma, the disciple, the tomboy, the Shiba guy, and the crybaby. Thinking about it, that makes exactly 5. I recalled Dharma not being involved in the betrayal, but was I wrong? No, there was something more important to say first. I told you to stop cutting out the context and dropping bombs on me out of nowhere. As I said that and looked at him, the Soul King gazed toward the endless horizon, slowly blinking his eyes that I could vaguely guess the grand design he was drawing and the mindset he lived by. But I still have no idea what's going on in his head. Letting out a deep sigh, I stood beside the Soul King and looked in the same direction. To the west, the setting sun, and to the east, the rising moon decorated the sky. Soon I shall disappear. Yeah, you'll probably get stabbed in the back by my disciple and sealed away. Chuckles. What, did this guy just laugh? For real? Startled, I looked at the Soul King, but he had already returned to his usual expressionless face. I mean that my existence shall vanish. Not in some distant future, but very soon. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. Soon I shall completely lose my reason, e.g., and become the seed of destruction that devours the world. This was something that hadn't appeared in the original story. I had a vague inkling. Tsuneyashiro had said, the Soul King's existence is a threat to the world, but I had assumed that the Soul King had guided Tsuneyashiro to think that way. After all, the Soul King had shown human emotions in front of me before. He seemed like a person who accepted his end, calling it the end for a beginning, and prepared for what came next while knowing his fate. Is that the end you spoke of? Yes. Even in a situation like this, he gives me one-word answers. I thought that. The Soul King looked me straight in the eye. Do you have a reason for being born? That's a tough question. Normally, I would have said I hate philosophy, but I couldn't bring myself to do it this time. I had to think for a long while. A reason for being born. A reason? Can appearing in this world even be called being born? I don't know. After long deliberation, there was only one answer. I have a reason to live, but I have no reason for being born. Watashi. No, where, the moment I was born into this world, was granted a reason for my existence. Do you know what it is? The Soul King fell silent, as if waiting for my response. In the end, for better or worse, the conversation wouldn't continue unless I provided an answer. Eradicating hollows? Similar, but different. I was born to eliminate the malignancy that harms this world. Hollows are included in that, but so are those who break the balance or pose a risk of breaking it. Does that mean the monk and the other 4 are included too? Yes. It refers to beings with reason, e.g., like you who have already crossed the boundary, or those I have named. Their existence will eventually greatly impact the balance of the world. Therefore, if I were to lose my reason, I would surely attempt to eradicate them. Therefore, I ask you to protect them, so that I do not kill them. So that those who might become a new beginning are not ended. It is something only you can do. As the Soul King spoke, his face looked profoundly sad. Chapter 25, The Almighty Versus. The impotent. Ever since my conversation with the Soul King, my mind had been caught in a relentless cycle of thought. He told me I could take my time to decide, but he had thrown such a massive weight onto my shoulders that I couldn't simply push it aside for later. Thinking is the one thing I loathe most in this godforsaken stretch of time, yet that damn Soul King went and made me think unnecessarily. Thanks to him, the time that used to flow by without a care now felt agonizingly slow. It felt as if someone had physically halted the hands of the clock. Sigh. The phrase, something only I can do, kept snagging on my conscience. Me, those words sounded like absolute horseshit, honestly. I'm already terrible at mental gymnastics, and now, thanks to a certain someone, I'm forced to work my brain into a lather. Fucking hell. I swear, if this keeps up, my hair is going to fall out just like that Daruma monk's. If there's one thing I can't stand, it's having a head as smooth as a mountain range. Letting out a deep sigh at those idle thoughts, I pushed myself up from my seat and gripped a wooden club that I considered saying something to my disciple and the others before leaving, but then I wondered why I should bother going that far. They're the type to do just fine without me. More importantly, my presence would likely only hinder their growth. Tsuneyashiro probably wouldn't change whether I was there or not, but the others were different. Especially the Shihoin kid. Wait, no. That wasn't my fault. That was Tsuneyashiro gaslighting her. What the hell, looking back, I didn't do a single thing wrong from the start. Well, I guess it doesn't matter anymore. I closed my eyes, clearing my head of the rowdy brat, the crybaby Kuchiki, the gloomy Tsuneyashiro, the chatterbox Shiba, and the Daruma monk, but that wasn't enough. I erased the day and the night, the club in my hand, and even the concept of myself from my mind. My consciousness began to peel away from my flesh, and the world around me turned a stark, blinding white. It was the first time in a long while that I had entered the state of Mue, the void of no-self. Training deity, the center of a world turned entirely white. I etched those two words into my mind and opened my eyes. Since he says it's something only I can do, I might as well get to it. Yeah. It's a request from a friend, after all. I should see it through to be honest, calling him a friend was a stretch, but considering how we'd shared things he didn't show anyone else, and how our fates had been entwined until now, it was closer to a bizarre sense of kinship. But then again, hasn't the Soul King only ever sought me out when he needed something? That bastard. He's only a friend when it's convenient for him. Cursing the Soul King internally, I swung my club, and I kept swinging until the day he would come to find me again. Have you ever had the experience where you're lost in thought, and suddenly tens of minutes, or even hours, have vanished? It's partly due to concentration, but it's mostly because a spirit detached from the flesh is no longer bound by the flow of time. The perception of time moving or stopping is something that happens within the domain of the mind. Once you transcend that, the current of time loses its grip on you. Of course, this doesn't mean you can physically travel to the past or leap into the future. Actually, saying you go to the future might be somewhat accurate, because no matter how much time passes, to a consciousness severed from the body, that vast duration feels like nothing more than a moment. Sensing a familiar presence approaching, I tethered my detached spirit back to my physical shell and returned to reality. Where the boundary between the forest and the desert once stood, a bottomless canyon had formed. A ravine of such dizzying depth that the floor was invisible now divided the landscape. Forest to the left, desert to the right. It looked as though an almighty god had drawn a line with a colossal blade just to separate the two. Naturally, the wooden club I had held at the start of my training was long gone. It hadn't just broken, it had presumably rotted away into dust, leaving not a single trace behind. Fuck, just how much time has passed. At this point it was getting a little scary. I figured he'd show up if I just trained for a bit, so I dived into the void, but exactly how long was I under? I scratched my head, but strangely enough, my hair was exactly the same length. Wait, it didn't grow at all. Maybe not that much time passed. That was weird. If that was the case, how did this canyon get here, and why did my club turn to powder? So how long has it been? As I asked the question, I turned around. There stood the Soul King right where I remembered him being, with the same face and the same presence as before. But unlike before, the Soul King didn't answer. He didn't react at all. He must be in that state he mentioned, the one where he disappears. I waved a hand in front of him, but he just stared at me, devoid of any response. Honestly, it was a bit eerie, like watching a mannequin come to life. Hey, I'm empty-handed right now. Couldn't you give me a weapon or something? I shook my hand again, but the Soul King remained silent, merely observing. Back in the day, you'd at least nod. Now you won't even give me that? I was about to open my mouth to see if a few insults would trigger a reaction, but then a blue line etched itself across the Soul King's arm. Immediately after, I felt it, the same explosive power he used whenever he performed eradication on hollows. And so it begins. The surrounding area began to be whittled away into clusters of blue light. No, it wasn't being whittled away. Everything in the vicinity was deconstructing itself into erasure by its own volition, swirling into the palms of the Soul King. Everything was slaying its own existence to return to the side of the king. Because it was the king's will, they did not resist. All things in creation belong to the king. Thus, anything composed of erasure obeys the king's intent. That power was utterly overwhelming. As someone who didn't know how to manipulate Raisher and had never tried, I couldn't quantify exactly how much power was in that sphere, but I knew instinctively how dangerous it was. Ugh, gives me the creeps. Exactly how much energy is this lunatic planning to gather? Is he trying to wipe out this entire region in one go? My skin was crawling. You said you'd try to kill everything once you lost your mind. Were you being literal? The guy who gave everything names, who claimed this was the end for the sake of a beginning, and who didn't fear his own death. Just as I let out a bitter smile, the Soul King extended his arm toward me. You really do plan on killing me? Come on, can't you at least give me an answer? Are you really gone? Hey, good grief, in the end it's going exactly as you said it would. Frustrated, I scratched my head and stepped toward the Soul King. He looked as small as an ant from where I stood, but I took a single step with the intent of folding the world itself. In that solitary stride, I arrived right in front of his nose. You're the one who asked me to stop you, so don't hold a grudge, all right? My club is gone, but I've put in quite a bit of work with my fists in the meantime. This is going to sting a little. That I threw a punch with everything I had toward the Soul King, and the Soul King fired his gathered Raisher back at me. My fist collided with the torrent of the King's power. And then there was light. The mere existence of the Soul King brings about ruin. First, I vaguely remembered hearing something like that in the original story, so I just took it at face value. But the more I fought him, the more I understood what it meant for his existence to summon destruction. That absolute madman. Every time we fight, he scrapes up every bit of Raisher from the environment and fires it. No wonder they were freaking out about the world ending or whatever. It's chilling to watch the surroundings literally vanish every time we clash. Sure, I'm physically pulverizing the environment too, but the Soul King is fundamentally different. The things I smash will eventually recover or change form over time, but the King's power to extinguish the environment is absolute. No matter how much time passes, what he takes will stay gone. Just like a hollow that has been eradicated, it is completely deleted and never returns. Clicking my tongue, I flopped onto my back and looked up at the sky. The drifting clouds looked so peaceful that I originally wanted to live a peaceful life like those clouds. How did things end up like this? I'll kill you, Rikishima Soul King. I cursed him out, mostly because whenever there was a problem, blaming the Soul King usually turned out to be the correct answer. And come to think of it, he really was the source of all these problems. Sigh. Speak of the devil. Sensing the Soul King's presence in the distance, I slowly picked myself up. Today is a new record. He's not even Jesus, but he's back after only 3 days. Incredible. Truly incredible. I stretched my neck and stood up. Watching the Soul King approach from the horizon, I scratched my head. It's like I'm playing a tower defense game. Except every single wave is just the final boss. What a shitty game. I let out a heavy sigh and brushed the dirt and dust off my body. Clothes? Those have been torn and burned away for ages. I felt a bit embarrassed about being naked at first, but I'm over it now. I've been doing this for 100 years already. This isn't exactly a special occasion anymore. When is this ever going to end? I'm so sick of this.